And we're
All
live.
right. Hi. Sorry that we're a little bit late. I had some stuff that I'm doing that I'm so excited about when you guys actually get to see what I was late doing. It'll be a while. All right. Are you ready for some Gaytriarchy? Are you a man? Are you a gay man? Are you a bisexual man? Are you a not gay or bisexual man that has probably been repeatedly mistaken as gay over the course of his life? And people have had to ask, wait, are you gay? Maybe. And maybe you went to a very far left university where there's lots of people who say that they're gay, but maybe they're largely not actually gay. And a lot of those people kind of wanted you to be gay, but then it turns out that you are actually, in fact, a straight white male. And now you're on the Gaytriarchy. Say hi, Benjamin.
That you didn't describe me whatsoever. I've never been accused of being gay. I'm sorry, but it's just not true.
Maybe not accused, but definitely
ever had to
fantasized.
I only kissed one guy.
No, I'm not saying accused. There's literally never been a single person that's asked you if you were gay.
Well, people have made a pass at me, but nobody's ever like said, "Hey, are you gay?"
Really?
They're like, no. They're like, "Hey, can we do gay things together?" Like that's the closest I've ever gotten.
So they didn't even. So basically, the point was they didn't even have to ask.
They just went for it.
All right, I refuse to be homophobic on this homosexual show.
But you are confirming you've been homositioned before.
Homo sapient. Maybe, yeah. I have a gaydar, if that's what you're asking. Kevin Spacey threw me for a loop, though. I did not expect that.
Well, he's an actor. One of the, if I was like one of these like pretentious, whiny, gay author type people that, I mean, it's not that I'm not whiny, but I whine about different things than they do. And one of the fucking things that you'll if you were to read like the long form essays that are published in like The Advocate magazine or something, they would be like, well, the thing is, there's been many gay male actors because as homosexuals, we have to act our entire life. We have to pass as straight and blah, blah, blah. And that's why
life is a performance.
But I do think that that's true. Like, I don't think that that's not a good point to a certain degree. But
it depends how hard you take it.
But okay, Benjamin, I'll be perfectly honest. I don't know if anybody here has asked me if you're gay, but I have had people like subscribers ask me like, "Oh, so you know Benjamin Boyce? Is he gay?" And I'm like, "No, I don't. I'm pretty sure no." Just so you know.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah,
I'm cool with that. I like what you were saying about the acting quality or the passing quality or the necessity for to relieve yourself of certain stress. You might need to act like something that you're not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that the gay community has had to adapt to, or the homosexual people have had to adapt to for most of history. Is that correct?
Largely, yeah. And then there's guys like me who've just like never been good at it, so they just don't try.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah.
The more confusing are the ones that you swear are gay but are in fact not. I grew up with a lot of those kind of people, and they were usually my youth pastors, and they had wives and lots of children, and they confused all.
Like maybe like Richard Spencer. Oh wait, he is gay.
It would not surprise me in the least.
Well, what makes you wonder about somebody being gay that turns out to be living a straight lifestyle? Like, what are the behaviors or the vibe that they give off?
Rephrase the question. Sorry.
I think I know what you're saying, but when I meet someone who I swear is gay, but they don't appear to be because they have a wife, they have children, they're living the straight life. It's true there are sometimes men that are just not typically straight acting, and they, for whatever reason they come off that way. But the thing that sets off my gaydar, or at least confuses me, is when there's someone who just does not. I can't really explain it very scientifically. It's just that you meet a person and they're like, you just seem really gay. I don't know if it's your overall disposition. I don't know if it's your, and I'm speaking to a metaphorical you, not you, Benjamin. But like, for instance, I had a youth pastor who was, I swear to God, I swear he was gay. Even when I was like little, I was like, oh my god, there's just something that's not quite right about him, because he had the limp wrists, he giggled all the time, like he'd kind of flit around. And now here's the thing, though, in a very religious community, because I grew up very, very religious.
Okay.
It's not at all unusual to meet someone who, especially when they're in a high functioning religious capacity, that it wouldn't be that weird for you to find out, like, well, when I was young, I had these thoughts, and then Jesus came to me and I found out how to suppress them, which is a classic story of, like, the very religious attempting to deny their nature because of what they believe they have to. I went through something very similar to that. So I guess when I see it, or at least when it reminds me of that, I tend to think like, oh, okay, I think I know where you're coming from.
Would you say that it is an effeminate quality? Does that word hold any meaning, or is that proper at all?
No, it does. Like, and not all, I mean, of course, not all gay men are effeminate or, feminine acting. Like, that's, a stereotype. But no, I mean, like, there are some gay men that are very masculine, and there are some gay men that are very feminine.
Can I insert myself here, though? Because I have the weird thing about me where I'm simultaneously, like, super faggy, but I'm actually not effeminate. And I think that comes across more if you meet me in person, where it's like, no, this guy's, like, masculine presenting, and also I have this certain masculine energy. Like, my face looks very stern when I talk. I'm very, very serious looking. But I still am very, very faggy, and I bring my voice up higher than I would naturally talk. That was something subconscious that I trained myself to do ever since I went through puberty that I can no longer help. And it's like this, but it's not exactly effeminate, like, well, my voice sounds effeminate, but in person I don't think that I'm particularly. I think I'm more effeminate than a lot of guys, but I think that there's a difference between faggy and effeminate.
It is true, and there are men who, like yourself, that are outliers, and there are men that, like, they're all at the risk of using SJW type language. It's a spectrum. There's all kinds. Like, there are the ones who, like, he's gay, and then there are the ones that are like, well, of course he's gay. Like, and there's all in between that.
But
there are some.
Is it anchored in, and would you guys consider it gayness? Whatever we're trying to describe, I'm just trying to suss out more qualities of what it is to, like, present as gay. Is it anchored in the feminine? It's
stereotypically, yes.
Okay, but stereotypically, no. But not in actuality, or not in.
I would say mostly it actually is. So stereotypically, and the stereotype exists for a reason. Yes.
Well, this is one area where I think Prince and I, we mostly agree, but sometimes we differ. Like, I do believe that there are, like, classically speaking, the gays that are the most visible, which are the ones that stand out, the more feminine seeming ones, or the more, let's not even say feminine, let's just say flamboyant. That might be a better word. The ones that are just very dramatic and animated. Sometimes it's a little to the feminine, but, I think flamboyant is a better word. The flamboyant gays, the chorus boys, the ones with the makeup, they're easy to spot. So, of course, we tend to think that, historically speaking, that's what's most associated with gayness. Now, of course, there are all kinds of gays that throughout all history. And I'm not playing the whole, like stereotype game. But at the same time, that is one of the more dramatic elements. But I do also believe that there is a more subtle and more difficult to define gayness. Like, I don't like to use vague language, but I mean, for lack of a better word, sometimes you just get a vibe. I don't know if it has to do with body language, like sometimes you just meet someone, and I don't know, you guys, you sort of notice that you're both checking each other out, but it's subtle. Sometimes it's just the thing that you talk about, and I don't know. I mean, I don't have any evidence for this, but it wouldn't surprise me if certain men just sort of, like, if gay men maybe have a slight, not pheromone, but, like, if we give off a certain, I don't know, because
I think that I see what you're saying, and I think it would probably be based mostly around a certain self-consciousness around other men that straight guys don't give off. Like, you meet a straight guy for the first time, and he is just 110% comfortable to be around another guy, and then you meet a gay guy, and even if he's straight seeming, there's a certain like barrier that's up with him because it's
a barrier, but also an openness, maybe, because I
okay.
think
Now we're getting confusing.
Well, yeah,
no.
Yeah, let's just slow down. Just slow down just a tiny bit.
Can I give my one of how to tell if someone who's not obviously gay is gay?
Please
speak bisexual.
Hey, don't you bi shame me or whatever the word is.
You're
Anyway,
only here because of affirmative action.
Anyways, mine is if they pick up on gay speak too quickly.
Yeah.
Like they understand our slang too
Natural.
quickly.
It ain't natural if they get it too quick, or if they laugh at too much Kathy Griffin. That's how you know.
Well, if they like Kathy
yeah,
Griffin at all, generally, that's
Oh, and I think that gay guys also definitely dog whistle to each other.
yeah.
Like-
Maybe it's like we just have been picking up on our dog whistles and like our subtle kind of inside references, and you don't really think about them. But being a minority, like in the greater, larger population, like we do have some differences that we don't necessarily even always think about.
Yeah, I went and
It's
got
sorry.
I got my hair cut at the mall, and my hair cutter was this bear, and I could tell he was gay, but he like looking at me, if I say less than 2 sentences and just sit there in the fucking chair, you wouldn't necessarily know that I'm gay, especially because of my tattoos. And so when I get up, I'm paying, and I'm not exaggerating. It was literally Cher, "Do You Believe in Life After Love" comes on the stereo system, and he's ringing me up, and he starts like kind of lip syncing a little bit as if he was like dog whistling to me. Like, it's like, dude, I already know you're gay. You don't have to lip sync to Cher. But
yeah, I think the funniest one is where like you're in a small group of people, and then if you happen to go on Grindr, and then you see that there's someone like 10 feet away from you, and there's like no one else around.
Okay.
But
So
that
you
one
guys
is
have Spidey sense now in your phones.
yeah. Although I have to say, Grindr's reliability in that department has been shot to hell ever since they got bullied into including transgender people and women. So now
Yeah.
that is basically useless.
There was an article for that I wanted to bring up this week. I got to go find that.
Oh, something else now?
No,
But
it's about
Derek
the Grindr thing.
Actually, bring
Derek
this.
was going to
back
say something.
Yeah, because like so this original topic was about this idea of like gay passing, and it reminded me of this was a huge topic when I studied philosophy, and like of course they did the full SJW smorgasbord, and a huge part of it has to do with epistemology and race. And I think a lot of it's in W.E.B. Du Bois. I'm not actually sure if he speaks this, or it's Du Bois, either Du Bois or Du Bois. But a lot of it has to do with this idea that like if you are a racial minority, you kind of have a set of standards and cultures and like ways of knowing and ways of speaking that are part of that culture. And then when you go to interact with the broader culture, you have to like put a different hat on. And like some of that actually has a really interesting parallel. And this happens a lot with like gay issues versus race issues. Like the gay community gets criticized a lot for saying that like we kind of like appropriate race and then say like, oh, it's the same deal. But it's not so much that as much as like a lot of the structures kind of carry over. And like the whole gay passing versus race passing is one of those. The other interesting aspect, which I think we're talking about this later, this idea of like straight men and their incentive to go trans. So like for a straight man versus a gay man, there's a different kind of a situation as far as this. There's shared ground in that what we are detecting is more of a feminine style of behavior. And I think a lot of it has to do with the feminine gender role specifically, that like when you act in those feminine ways, you're kind of like doing and seeking and interacting with the world in such a way that like you would find a provider and take on a feminine role. Whereas the masculine role is like the opposite. But then with straight men, the idea is that part of like game and pickup culture, it doesn't necessarily take on the traditional masculine idea. It's that once that becomes the goal, they could take on more feminine roles now that egalitarianism, that Pandora's box has been opened. So for a straight man, it's kind of like one dimensional in that like you could see it going on a continuum that at its most extreme, they become trans women to date like weird, trendy lesbians. And then on the spectrum for gay men, it's more of like a natural organic process. But then at that extreme end, you know, you could have people who like have an entire like different facade that's super gay, which is more similar to like how people view like the racial divide with like passing. So that was, I hope all that kind of makes sense.
There's a lot in there.
I'll have to like listen to that on playback.
I'm
Personally,
just gonna put it out there, like Spacepan. I'm sure that there is an internal logic to that, but I must admit I had a little trouble following all of it. Like,
Well,
I think I get.
I
the
like
gist of it.
I like to say that Derek is just kind of smarter than I am.
That was it's a choose your own adventure, and like if you read a choose your own adventure from start to cover, it's really confusing. But yeah, like the playback idea might be good.
So are you saying that you broke the narrative structure of our conversation, thus embedding like multiple interpretive truths in a self-forming structure?
Yeah, we just invented the Mandela effect. We're gonna have it like quadruple from the moment of this stream onward.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that you said that I would like to slow down and go back to is that you said that there was an accusation toward the gay community from the racial activist community that there's appropriation going. And you said that there are just certain structures that the gay community has adopted in order to survive as a minority that map onto certain structures of behavior that racial minorities enact in order to survive. Is that true?
Spacepan.
What?
I was seeing if he heard you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I unmuted and I realized I didn't. But
Okay.
basically, it's even vaguer than that. Just this idea that if you look at the rhetoric of like gay rights activists, it mimics the rhetoric of like black rights activists a lot of times. They just kind of take it and then kind of control F and replace black for gay a lot of the times. And it's a valid criticism, right? Because the idea that it's just kind of like this one-to-one comparison like is something that should get called out. But also the point is that there's issues on both sides, and the parallels actually, you know, even if they're different or even not to the same degree, the parallels can still be useful for understanding the situation.
Yeah.
I personally am not a huge fan of this whole call out culture that we seem to be getting into. Like, I believe it's important to, in the most literal sense, you know, draw attention to inconsistencies and things that are wrong. But I feel like, and I don't think you meant it this way, but I feel like the idea of call out is like this idea of where, like, you know, something wrong has been done and it must be like, you know, avenged or addressed. So like specifically about like the, you know, whether or not like gays are appropriating like black, because they're saying like, you know, gays are always like stealing from black women. Like that's the current narrative right now.
Because we totally do.
Okay,
it's not even a thing. We do.
All right, hold on with here. So I think that gays and gay men and black women have similarities in that we are both groups that are sometimes at odds with the more dominant paradigm of what's going on in society. If there's similarities between like the gay civil rights movement and the black civil rights movement, it's because, again, we're both minorities in the most literal sense. And I really don't think that, to be honest, the distinction between being, you know, a racial minority or being a, you know, sexual political identity is very important, because at the end of the day, discrimination is discrimination is discrimination. Whether you're being discriminated against because you are black or whether or not you're being discriminated because you're a Huguenot in Catholic France. They were all French, but discrimination against the Huguenot Protestants was real. And it didn't matter that they were, you know, ethnically French like everyone else. They were a minority. They were a small group, and they had to act differently than the majority because they were smaller, they were different. Gay men, gay women too, but, you know, just the gay civil rights movement was the attempt to assert autonomy over a smaller group of people that didn't have a whole lot of social capital and were being legitimately victimized. Now, whether or not you want to say that, like, you know, like, oh, it's not the same because some of them were gay, some of them were white, some of them were black. You know what? I don't really care about that. I feel like at the end of the day, if you're being victimized, you're being victimized. I really don't like this motion that we have now of qualifying everything. It's like, okay, yes, you're a victim, but you're only a level 1 victim. You see her over there? Well, she's a level 2 victim because she has more problems than you.
Okay, wait. I want to. Sorry, I can say something really, really quick. Just we're getting on this sort of like tangent of the oppression Olympics intersectionality, which I imagine that we will be getting into more. But when we talked about appropriating gay men appropriating Black women, and Derek said, yes, we do. I just want to say something real quick about that. But isn't that a part of gay men being actors? Like, don't gay men appropriate straight white men? Don't gay men appropriate straight white women? They just happen to sometimes hang out with Black girls and then kind of act like the Black girls that they're friends with, because gay guys are always looking for new social cues because there's not enough of us to have our own.
I think what it comes from is that. Oh, sorry, you did more. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's all.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like for example, like my favorite rapper is Shamika Brown, aka Lady of DJ Black Bill Gates Records. She's amazing. She's got like Twerk and Yankin and all these just amazing songs. It's just like this awesome freaking music, and I don't know, it just speaks to me. And I've heard a lot of times people describe the Black community as a matriarchy, and I think that the shoe kind of fits in terms of the gay culture's attraction to it, because like as our Cat's-Gay was saying earlier, there's sort of like, I think, a draw to this subversive kind of a culture and element if you feel like you're not part of like the overall dominant thing. And I think that might be kind of a strain that they have in common, and that like a lot of this like imitating of like strong Black women, like it is kind of like a like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know how to. I don't want to describe it in like MMO terms. I try not to go there. I really try to keep that that mask on.
I feel like
this kind of makes sense. You know what I mean? Like the Black culture is more matriarchal because there's a lot of like very single mother culture, and I think that has a lot to do with it. That like we have these images of like the females as the head of the household, and a lot of gay men, I think, view themselves as like the head of a female household, and that's why like the Black woman trope kind of speaks to them.
Maybe, but I feel like also like gay men have a tendency to be flamboyant more so than even more straight acting gay men. Like when gays get together, there's a tendency for us to sort of, ham it up a little bit. I'm not exactly sure why, but that just seems to be, I mean, I know I do it, even though if you meet me, I'm not a very, quote unquote gay acting person. But when I'm around other gay guys, or even if I've just been drinking a lot, I tend to, get a little bit, more flamboyant. And
everybody has to fake out every once in a while.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And, let's put it this way. Black women, for instance, are, if we're going just in broad strokes, much more dramatic than, they're very animated. Like whether or not this is reality or not, like the image of Black women culturally, like, whatever, is a very animated, very dramatic, very, expressive individual. And that is similar to the flamboyant gay identity. But I guess what I want to say again, though, is like, I'm just sick to death of this idea of appropriation, because I get where it's coming from, but I have gotten to the point where I just reject the whole notion. I think there is a big difference between emulation, between identification, and appropriation, because appropriation implies that we're taking something that belongs to someone else. And I'm sorry, that kind of thing doesn't belong to anyone else. If a straight woman wants to act like, like a really hammy gay man, am I going to tell her, quit taking my culture?
Yeah, no, I fucking agree. And because that's the other fucking thing. Like the women who, the gay guys who supposedly act like Black girls and shit, those girls don't act half as crazy unless they're hanging out with their gay friends.
True. Completely
like
true.
Like it's like you get that sassy Black woman in a room full of like 8 or 9 gay guys, and she is 10 times as sassy because they laugh at all her jokes. Because I've been there a lot. Like, so yeah. It's like, it's not, it is a feedback loop that feeds off each other, that energy. Like once people start behaving in that type of way, it's like I in San Francisco would not uncommonly end up at these after parties, and it would be like me, maybe one other white guy, and then like 8 or 9 Black people, and there'd be like 1 or 2 females there, and then everybody else would be Black gay guys, and that woman would get to be like the star of the little after party, and she would just be like, so she would be so loud, and everybody would pay attention to her, and she just fucking loved it. And so she would be 10 times as sassy in front of the gay guys as I'm sure she would in her everyday life. Like wherever she worked, I'm sure she wasn't acting like that, but when she's around the gay friends, she does act like that. So to accuse us of stealing from her is a little bit strange.
It's this idea of cultural ownership, which is very much in line with modern kind of leftist politics right now that, which again is just a weird kind of regressive pattern back to tribalisms. Like, okay, these people are this, they act this way, this belongs to them. Stay in your corner, stay in your lane, do this, don't do that. It's about control, because what could be more threatening to what could be more threatening to a control-based narrative than people just kind of going about living their lives and not worrying about things like microaggressions and cultural appropriation? Because a great example of what I think the function of those kind of things are, have any of you seen M. Night Shyamalan's The Village?
No.
The Village.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay, good, Derek. That's a good movie. You've seen it, Ben?
No, but I
Okay.
haven't.
All right. Well,
You guys want me to spoil it? I could spoil it.
well,
It's imminently spoilable. I know there's a spoiler at the end, so you don't need to spoil it. Like, okay,
Yeah,
it's
it's
gonna
on
be
my
a spoiler.
channel, so
it's
if there
over-
wasn't a spoiler, that would be a spoiler.
Well, here's the thing. It's over 10 years old now. It's way older than that, so I don't care about spoilers. No, the whole thing about the Village is that it's a society, an artificial society, where in order to keep people inside this unnaturally small space, they have to create a culture of fear. And to do that, they have to give them things to do to keep them occupied. So one of the things is they create the idea of good and bad colors. The idea that there are these enemies that you can't see out in the woods, that they are the ones that we don't speak of, that you can't name them, so they're mysterious, and they're drawn to the bad color, which happens to be the color red. So anytime someone finds anything that's red, whether it's a flower, a berry, blood, anything, people are just swarm all over it, trying to get rid of it, trying to cover it. And it's a way to keep people busy, and a way to keep them from thinking about, well, what is out there? And I feel like that's what the idea of microaggressions and cultural appropriation are for. It's a way to keep people from really getting to know each other, because once people get to know each other, then they start, well, we're really not that different. And like, as long as we keep othering each other, as long as we keep thinking about my tribe, your tribe, well, then we can just keep fighting, and we can keep.
Yeah. Okay. Then this is the question. If you're part of a way of naturally behaving that is just naturally different than almost everybody else, how do you get along in that? How do you convince yourself, or how do you initiate a culture that accepts somebody who's just naturally so different, like just ostentatiously different, like defined by their difference and their performance of the swapping of genders, or the intensification of the feminine in their own character?
You have to get to know them. You have to have a genuine and honest exchange of perspectives, because at the end of the day, the human experience, no matter this is just my opinion now, I think at the end of the day, the human experience is varied, and we're all different. Yes, some of us very different, but we're still human. We have to get through all the various layers of difference to find the things that we have in common. So like, for instance, various religions are extremely different. Islam is extremely different from Buddhism. It's extremely different from Jainism, etc., etc. The C.S. Lewis, for instance, broke down the idea that all religions are just antithetical to each other isn't really true. He said, once you stop arguing about how many gods are there, what are they called, what do we eat, what do we not eat, at the end of the day, most religions want the same thing: be a good person, whatever that may mean to that culture. Treat people well, etc., etc. You have to be able to get through the obvious stuff. So if you have someone that's completely, off the rockers, well, then you have to figure out a way to talk to them. Like you have to, I will be the first to admit there are some conversations which may not be possible in normal circumstances. Like, for instance, like if coming back to the village, like if a crazy person comes to the village and they don't speak your language, you may not be able to have a conversation with that person, but you're going to have to assert a level of control over that situation. Like if they're running around screaming, but you don't understand them, well, you're going to have to find some way to calm them down, to sit them down and find a way to communicate. Now,
I think that the examples you gave kind of draw out the really simple answer, which is that it comes down to differences that have to do with your functioning in society. And the litmus test for it is going to be like, do people voluntarily want to deal with you? And that's going to depend on who you're dealing with, what the service is, what the instance is, and you know, what kinds of like eccentricities someone brings. Like generally speaking, homosexuality, it's kind of disruptive, but not really. You know, in regards to 95% of your life, it's kind of like the same crap, you know. But like there's other things you could have like that might be a lot more taxing, like switching genders all the time might be really, really demanding, relatively speaking.
And coming back to homosexuality, like I like to reference this TED Talk, which I still think if any of you haven't seen it, you should. It's I forget what the name is of it now, but it's a TED Talk about like the epigenetics of gay. Like it's about a doctor who wants to who has a gay son, and he wants to figure
basically it's Born This Way, the TED Talk.
Yes, but it's much more than that. He goes into like, well, why would nature want such a thing? And he gave the single best explanation for why gay men exist, which is because like gay men are a response epigenetically to stress, long-term stress in the pregnancy. And we serve as a natural stress reducer in a small tribal society. When the mother is extremely stressed, she may need, like, that may mean that there's not a lot of food. It may mean there's a lot of predators around. There's trouble. And when there's a lot of stress in the pregnancy, there's a very large chance that the child will be gay if it's a male. And the reason for this being advantageous is because you're creating an offspring which is stronger than a female, but isn't going to compete with the other males in the tribe for mates, and isn't going to produce more children to feed when resources are limited. We are the caregivers of the society. Like, we're the glue that hold together the family units in a unique way that a regular member of society doesn't do. Like,
yeah, but wait, I want to get back to Benjamin's questions because I kind of feel like I'm no longer following how this has to do with his question. So could you rephrase the question?
My question? Well, my question was trying to get to, so I'm interested. Basically, there's a very strong actor. My whole like YouTube life is centered around this Evergreen thing. I'm trying to escape it, but it's this Evergreen College in Washington thing. And there was a bunch of protests, and in a lot of the footage, there is one individual who is at the head of the whole thing, and he's directing the whole thing. And Jamil, he insists on being a they. He insists on being identified as a femme trans individual. But basically, he's just a gay guy. But because he's so geared to getting attention, it seems that playing with gender in this very social, I'm playing all these cards with the trans identity rights, it muddles the fact of what he actually is, and it leverages that to get him more attention. So I'm just wondering, what's the difference? Well, it's an intersection. So I don't know how authentic any of his labels are, but I just wonder what you guys I wonder what you guys think about, because we were talking about the matriarchal nature of gay society. You mentioned that, we didn't get into it, but and also the feminine, the intensification of the feminine in the behavior of the homosexual male, and how that kind of is oriented. We danced around this question about performance, about being an actor, about getting attention. And I just wonder why is there this femme thing? Wait. Can we just throw that away?
I actually have an interesting thing to say about, now that I'm thinking about that person, Jamil or whatever. And in relation to what Derek was sort of saying about the Black community being a matriarchy, trans female to male trans person that I have as a subscriber, and I talked one time, a long time ago, and one of the questions they asked, because they were transitioning to be male, but they were thinking they were actually mostly sexually attracted to men, and so they're like, okay, if I'm going to start dating gay men, I have to start understanding gay men. And so they wanted to talk with me about stuff, and they asked me, they're like, Prince, have you noticed that it seems like there's a lot of gay guys out there who are just kind of weird and they're like gay guys, but then there's some gay guys who it's like they exhibit every awful quality that women ever have, except for times 10? Like, it's not just that they're kind of annoying and kind of, but they're like every type of like manipulative, like conniving fucking thing that women like sort of do naturally. These guys have like made an art form out of it. And yes, the answer is yes. I have noticed that, you know, and I was thinking to myself, and I had to process like why that was, and I was able to zero it in on my sophomore year roommate in the dorms in college who was kind of like that, and he was friends with a number of, you know, like the rich popular girls in high school, and I think that what he kind of observed was he could use their sort of like social manipulation powers, but he didn't have the sex appeal.
Yeah.
Like all he could do was the dirty tricks that they pulled,
Yeah.
you know, to get ahead in high school. So instead of like, you know, flirting with the guys, he was just really fucking vicious to the guys. And in the ways that the girls could do if they had to, but usually they would just flirt. And so it was like this guy just ended up becoming this like ugly embodiment of everything that was bad about the evil popular girls at his high school.
Yeah.
And that's what my roommate was like. So you think about this person, Jamil, or somebody that's kind of like that, you know? And I think that there is a lot of in like assuming that somebody who's like that's mother was very likely kind of a crazy control freak, you know, like maybe they had to be, maybe like, let's say it's a single mother, and I don't know. And I don't want to be talking about Jamil because like, for all I know, I could hang out with this Jamil person now in the current day and actually have a real conversation. And this person would be like, yeah, I'm really embarrassed that I am, you know, internationally famous for my Evergreen stuff. You know what I mean? Like that could easily be the case by now. So, but I've known a number of people that are like this, where like they learned cues from their mother of various emotional
survive,
emotional manipulation of their environment. And so it's not just, you know, how does the mother control their brothers and sisters with creating all these rules that you better not break or she's going to get pissed, but she also does it to her boyfriends, and she also does it to, you know, like whoever the fuck is around her. And it's like, you better not cross my mother. And it's not just that she's going to whoop our ass, like, you know, that's the stereotypical thing from the Black community. I think it's largely a little bit outdated. I mean, I'm not saying that it isn't entirely, but like whatever. But I do think that there is this kind of sort of matriarchal thing that's going on with like, you know, I'm going to set up a bunch of arbitrary rules. And I'm going to make sure that you have to jump through all of these hoops all the time, repeatedly, if you're going to be around me. And if you don't jump through all of these hoops, you will be punished. And that's why there's all these little, you know, like you have to call me a femme, and you have to blah 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 blah. And it has to do with control, obviously, but
you
also
have to prove yourself,
but also it has to do with that person coming into adulthood. That is how they modeled adulthood after, like they like going away from the home and going into a college environment. Their automatic security is to try to mimic, like, okay, my mom isn't here to control everybody. How the fuck do I do it? I guess I have to do it now. And they just jump into that mode because they never had, they didn't have it taught to them.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. You just brought up some negative attributes of the matriarchy. You said that it's I'm going to paraphrase. You said that the matriarchy, this is my own words, the matriarchy controls through indirection and misdirection. It's a passive aggressive, or it's a underhanded way of manipulating control of the environment. You have a bunch of actors and you act upon the actor, right? Do we agree with that? And
I wouldn't disagree at this point.
Okay. I just wonder if you guys want to really form the Gaytriarchy, like how are you gonna take the good parts of the matriarchy and what
it's a joke. It's a
pattern? No, I'm serious though.
Don't worry, I have it all planned out.
How does a gay society not fall into toxic behavior, not undermine itself by means of both parties acting in underhanded.
Well, first we have to accept the fact that women aren't in control of us, and that's really actually a big deal. Like that's the biggest step number one is being like, wait, we're gay men. We aren't necessarily feminists, and in fact we shouldn't be feminists, and in fact only us, only we can solve our own problems, only we can truly give good advice to other gay men, only we can truly run the nonprofits that are for gay men, this big long list of things that have not been true for the past probably 10 years or so. The feminists have taken over all of it. So that's step number one, and then it's kind of like we have to seriously consider all of that question that you just asked.
I think part of it also, and I agree with everything you just said, Prince. I think part of it also, though, is that we have to accept the fact that we are men as well. Because I think for a long time, gay men have had this idea where it's like, well, we're men, sort of. We're it's always we're gay men, and the men the gay is super emphasized lately, and the man part is really downplayed. It's like, oh, girlfriend,
half the time they pretend that they're not men.
Well, that's what I was just gonna say. It's like gay men are not men. They are gay, or we are gay.
They're non-binary pansexual. Except for they're not. They really just want masculine cock, and that's what they look for on Grindr. It's like they're fucking drag queens and they identify as non-binary, except for they're not trying to date no fucking other drag queens. They're trying to get the Brad Pitt just like everybody else.
And this is one of the things that I've talked to with Feral Cat. Ben is one of our other part-time Gaytriarchs, who's a very interesting person. I think he's in the chat actually.
Yes.
He and I have talked about how it's really important that gay men reclaim our masculinity, or rather learn how to use it, because gay men have been infantilized for a very long time. We've been kind of, a lot of it has to do with I think maybe residual victimhood culture that we picked up from long activism. And it's not to say that we haven't actually been victims, but there's a difference between living a victimized lifestyle and learning to assert yourself. Most gay guys, I think, are rather unsure about how to be male, how to be men, capital M, the kind of the Jordan Peterson stand up straight, clean up your room kind of thing.
Okay.
And I think that is just as important. We have to make peace with the fact that gay men sort of straddle an unusual position in society, whereas because we are kind of two worlds, you might say. We are of the feminine and we are of the masculine, but we cannot allow one side to have primacy over the other. We have to find the balance.
It's almost like you guys have to be married to yourselves.
I guess so that we can, in true fashion, eventually learn to fuck ourselves.
That's what everybody wants you to do.
We figure we might as well give it a shot, right?
And
this is
once we learn to fuck ourselves,
psychology, right? Just like you need the animus, the balance of both. I think that's pretty much applies to everyone to a degree. And this is a lot of it gets chalked up to just bullshit feminist rhetoric, and it's kind of a shame because it's. We do throw the baby out with the bathwater. It might not be a full-grown baby. It might just be kind of like a fetus and some scraps. But hey, it kind of looks cool.
It can wiggle.
Yeah, I think a big if I were to say and I would say that a number of us probably agree. After we accept that A, we're not women, B, we don't deserve to be ordered around by women all the time, which is what the current state of things. Then after that, it's okay, now next thing is you have to keep sticking up for yourself. No one else is going to do it. The one thing that I will give females credit for, and now granted this was a very, very bad thing that they did, was they did back when the feminists used to pander to gay men and they used to try to make us think that they liked us. Well, now they don't do that anymore. They fucking hate us. And you know, and I don't know if you watch it, Benjamin. Did you watch my video where I talk about how feminists hate white gay men more than straight white men?
I think we had an interchange about that.
Okay, because it was just a few days ago that I actually posted a video about it, and
Okay.
like I make it's a 7-minute video, so you know, not a very long video for me. And I make the case that like they actively hate white gay men more than white straight men. That's what I do legitimately think that, and but they didn't used to. They used to kind of try to be like, oh yeah, you know, gay men are oppressed and we care about oppressed people, blah 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 blah. Well, during that phase, which was long, that was most of, you know, when I was a teenager, and even all through up until about 2013, 2014, they used to be like that.
The incipient phase.
Yeah, one of the things that they would do was that they would get vehemently defensive if anybody ever fucked with us. And if a straight guy was at a party and they ever fucked with their gay friend, that girl would be like, "How fucking dare you, you dumb motherfucker? That's my fucking friend." And then she would try to get him kicked out, and it was like this really, really, really big thing. And so you could always count on your straight female friend pulling her kind of like vicious female privilege cat claws out and, you know, coming for any straight guy that ever messed with you. And that was the part of the bargain that you got as a gay guy by being under the wing of feminism. But then it turned out that being under the wing of feminism was not worth it. And then it's like, okay, now we have to stick up for ourselves.
And we also have to learn how to stick up for ourselves in a different way, because I think if we just try to imitate the previous feminist inspired methodology, it's usually an appeal to like, oh my god, homophobe. That's not really the way a man defends himself, like is by crying about isms and phobes and things like that. That is a very feminine way of defending yourself, by appealing to group protection.
And gay guys would abuse it. Like gay guys would start like sometimes gay guys would probably start conflicts knowing that they could just cry homophobia and get the girls mad at some dude.
Oh yeah, the Keen and Peele skit, like a homophobe, like that comes to mind.
Well, I was wondering about what you guys think about this question. The gay community or the gay culture has had a history of activism, and I just wonder about what is the process that a culture needs to go through to let go of the activism component of it. And if activism will always, if you guys see activism just in all its different components, if it has an influence on the gay culture, and if you guys even think that that needs to leave because it's not necessary anymore, if there's a transition that happens.
As the one person who probably talks about this more frequently, I would say the activism needs to die, and it basically is the culture. There is not much of value outside of the activism itself at this point.
I still disagree with that, and this is something that I've brought up numerous times. I don't disagree with what you're saying entirely, but I will maintain for the rest of my life that there is a profound, distinctly gay male culture, and you find it most thriving if you go to places like New York City, San Francisco, LA, London, Berlin, not even in fucking Seattle, not even maybe in Chicago. No, I don't even know about Chicago. Like, I know there's lots of gay men, but I don't know if it's the same level of like you go to New York City and you hang out with some of those fashion and theater queens, and they have their own culture. And it's very distinctly gay male. It does not matter like what race you like. You meet some fucking like gay fashion designer from Hong Kong who speaks with a British accent, and he's like super smart, and he knows all of the theater guys, and like
I met someone like that. They told me the best. The best had a neck pocket, a fucking zipper neck pocket.
And I think it's actually kind of amazing. Like when you actually hang out around those type of gay guys, they're really, really they're actually extremely competitive when it comes to things like design, and some of them are really into music. A lot of them are like classical musicians. Some of them are ballet dancers, things like that, and I was in New York, so there's a lot of designers, and they're really, really rigidly competitive about design, because design is really hard. Like, it's not easy to make clothes or to design furniture or some shit. And there's something about the way in which those type of gay guys are competitive with each other, but then they, if you're one of the better ones, they also respect each other. You know, like, if it's like, okay, I fucking hate him. He, you know, we had a fight over the same guy like 15 years ago, but like, we also respect each other.
So
like,
there's a pecking order, but there's also like a meritocracy too.
Yeah, there is, and that whole part of gay culture is very divorced from activist culture. Activist culture is some other fucking thing that has nothing to do with fucking meritocracy at all, and is a lot currently a lot more infested with lesbians. It didn't used to be, because I mean, it used to be illegal to be gay, and then AIDS happened, and then so there was all this sorts of stuff around that. But there is this sort of like meritocratic elitist gay culture, and then all of the younger gay guys end up trying to imitate it, and it stems from these like trendsetters who are these like very elitist gay guys, and I do think that there's a distinct culture. Now, in the current year, if it seems like that's dead, it's merely because those gay guys, those like elitist smart gay guys like Bruce LaBruce, the filmmaker who made the film, it's called The Misandrists. I actually watched it at the Grand Illusion. And he's one of those guys. Like, he's actually really, really smart. I've met him before, and I've watched a lot of his old movies. I think that guys like him in the current year are just scared to be honest, because they would get attacked, as you know, in the way that I have and stuff. And so they are
honest
sort of
about what?
Honest about their feelings about, like, you know,
anything.
Yeah, practically anything. Like, you know, how the ways in which like lesbians are acting a fool, the fucking Islam, fucking like,
how we have to pander to the hierarchy.
Trans-trenders, people trying to redefine the word racism, like every fucking thing. Like, the vast majority of those type of gay guys that I were talking about, they act more like a slightly less dramatic version of Milo Yiannopoulos when you get them at a party. That's how they act.
I think one of a good example to that way I think about gay culture is Jewish culture, actually. One of the reasons that Jewish culture exists in the way that it does in Europe and America has to do with their very long segregated history. Ghettos literally created Jewish culture because it forced them to be all together. But a great example, though, is like, so you look at East Coast Jews versus West Coast Jews. The West Coast doesn't have the history of Jewish segregation, historically speaking, that the East Coast does. And so as a result, West Coast Jews, generally speaking, unless they're like Ben Shapiro wearing a yarmulke, you would never know that they were Jewish other than, you know, when they ask for no bacon or, you know, a few small things, if they're even that. Whereas East Coast Jews have a tendency to be very, well, not, I'm speaking in broad strokes again, but it's not that unusual to find, you know, very visibly and culturally Jewish people. I think gay culture is similar in the fact that a lot of our gay institutions, aside from activism, have to do with our separateness for a long time, the underground nature of gay men, the bars, the drag queens, like the wink wink, the subtleties. So it's the classic question, though. What is preferable? Because the Jews have asked the same question. Every minority has to ask this. There are benefits to being a segregated minority from a cultural perspective, because whatever problems you get from, you know, the persecution that forces you to be a segregated minority, it also has a tendency to cause a flourishing of individual cultures. So what's better, this individual culture that is unique and often beautiful, or just being regular members of society? Like, I have to say, like, for me personally, I'm using myself as just an example. I don't go around, you know, announcing my sexuality and acting in a very overtly gay way, because that's just not who I am. And generally speaking, when I interact with people, especially like men, girls, whoever, I'm just, you know, a person. Most of my friends are straight guys at this point, which I know like may seem unusual for gay guys, like historically, but, you know, and I used to have a lot more girlfriends when I was more
Yeah.
whatever.
Wait, hold
but
on. More what?
I found that, just being one of, I used to be a lot more, before I started thinking critically about my thoughts and about the state of gay affairs, I used to be much more left wing, much more kind of like, well, I'm gay, I should do this, I shouldn't eat here, I shouldn't do that. And I used to be much more like, I should have a lot of girlfriends. And then, but I realized I don't like these girls, and I
Were they
mostly want to
largely
hang out with the
feminists?
guys.
Were they largely
No,
feminist?
no. They're nice girls. I still know a lot of them. I'm still friends with them, but I found out I didn't really enjoy spending time with them as much as I did with their boyfriends, and not just because they were men, but because we just had more in common. And I found that I'm happier myself just being one of the guys. Typically speaking, I mean, sure, like if it's relevant, I'll bring up the fact that I'm gay or something about me. But other than the fact that I might make a reference to my husband or something like that, it just doesn't come up very often because it's really not the most important part of my life. Now, for the New York fashion designer, maybe that is a more important part of his life. But I think that we have to be comfortable with having both. I'm sorry, I cut you off, Ben. What did you say?
No, wonderful. I wanted to segue. Thank you guys. Just brief. Thank you guys for telling me your stories. It's really enriching for me to think through the world the way that you guys have experienced it.
It's a pleasure to have you asking these questions. But you always ask very interesting questions.
Well, I was going to ask about why are gay men attracted to straight females, but you brought up something that's more important. Well, maybe it's just the other side. Why do you think straight females are attracted to gay men? Like, why do they feel like they want to have a relationship? And I know this is a trope. Maybe this isn't something that you guys have experienced, but I just wonder if that's true in your
totally
life,
true.
and like, what do you guys think about that?
It's actually pretty easy to explain. It's because we make good.
We're not threatening.
We're not only are we're not threatening in any way. Not only are we not trying to fuck them like most other guys would, but we're not competition
for
mates and attention. So if you go out to a club and you're a girl and like you have another female friend with you, well, she might get the guys that you want hitting on her. So if you can go out with the gay guy, that can be ideal.
okay.
And
it's less likely to happen.
Yeah, and I don't know about the shopping thing. Like there's that stereotype of like.
Well, I want to go one step deeper, like about the friendship. Like, what is the exchange? Like the not just like the non-threatening, like the external stuff, but like what's the internal makeup of that attraction to one another and the ability to communicate? What's enabled to be communicated?
Well, okay, I can say what's happening from the gay guy's perspective. I really do. I would love for a YouTuber who's a straight female who would be, the princess of fags or something like that. Where's
the princess of Princess of Kings.
No, not kings.
And
princess of faggots. Like we need some like
because that channel totally would not be demonetized.
It'll be demonized though. It'll be demonized.
No, because there's girls that are out there who are not feminists at all and who like mostly have gay male friends and could just tell you like from A to Z everything that ever goes on from a girl's end with gay guys. Like I've known these girls, and
I can tell you my idea.
Well, but I
want to hear all of them.
I can't. I don't want to speak too much for the female end of it, but what I will say is that it starts very early with gay men, because around middle school, girls start maturing a little bit quicker. Like they start becoming more aware with things like sexual attraction and everything. Like they become more in tune with what other kids have crushes on who. Around 12, 13 or so is when it really starts happening. And so the girls start asking each other, who do you have a crush on? Who do you have a crush on? Do you think he likes you back? Do you think he likes you back? Sooner or later, they figure out that a kid is probably gay, right? So they're like, oh yeah, what about Prince? Do you think Prince is cute? Well, not really. doesn't he seem like he's kind of gay? Yeah. Actually, he acts kind of gay. Maybe he is gay. We should ask him if he's gay. And they start kind of noticing that. And often I think that they start noticing that sometimes before the guy even knows for sure that he's gay. Like he hasn't come to terms with the fact that he's gay himself. But the girls notice. Yeah. And so then they start trying to, and then they don't just come right out and ask. They start like trying to hang out with him and then just ask him, who do you like? Who do you have a crush on? Who do you like? And eventually he decides that it's safe to come out to them. And then they've had that camaraderie. And I would say the majority of gay guys, that's how they first come out, is with situations like that. And so from the gay male perspective, the comfort zone in coming out is with straight females, because females kind of notice that the one kid's different, and then they approach him about it.
So in a sense, they pop your social cherry then. Because they're more aware of.
I guess that's not an unfair thing to say. Yeah,
and not a bad way of putting it.
Yeah. It's a horrible way. You said something about the gutter. I was just trying to bring the gutter back into what we're talking about. So.
Oh, that's not the gutter, Benjamin. Like, you can't even see the gutter.
I know.
Like gutter you're age restricted. You can't see our gutter. I can tell you what my take on the gay man female relationship. I think the reason that women specifically like having gay friends, because I'll be honest with you, I think I'm very atypical, at least in this group, because I think I'm the only one here who had a very religious upbringing, and so like I come from a very different place. But I have found that I think a lot of girls honestly like gay men more than the gay men like the girls sometimes. Like it can, it's like, oh, my gay, like I need a gay. Like you don't usually see gay men trying to find like a straight woman to be their best, to be their hag. You kind of just end up with a fag hag. I think the reason that straight women specifically like gay men as friends is because we give them something that they can't really get from anyone else. We give them the male perspective with honesty, because because most men, straight men, when they interact with women, they interact with them in the socially, not just the socially conditioned, but also the evolutionary position, which is that I must interact with her as if I might at some point either have sex or there's a way in which a man interacts with a woman, because on some theoretical level there's the potential of sex. Since there is no potential of sex between a gay man and an actual gay man and a straight woman, the gay man can give her a more or less masculine, whether he acts masculine or not, he can give the masculine mentality, the male brain, if you will, but without any of the filters that men coddle women with usually, because it's usually like, to go to the more stereotypical fashion aspect. Why does the woman want a gay man to tell her? Because she knows that her girlfriends will lie because they're hurting her feelings, and she knows that her boyfriend either doesn't know or is too afraid to tell her what.
He's too afraid. Yeah, he's too afraid. Okay, girls are more likely to try to spare each other's feelings because they don't want her to turn around and insult her. Like, it's like, don't insult your female friend.
I look fat? Well, you look fat.
Yeah, it's like, well, you could have told me not to have that sundae that you and I shared. And by the way, you had most of it.
I didn't make you put sprinkles on it, bitch.
Yeah. No, like that, I think that will. I mean, and girls will kind of like do that stuff with gay guys, but yeah, there is girls.
We might tell them to fuck off.
No. I was talking about this with some of my straight guy friends that I play video games with. We were talking about how sometimes you go to a like bar or club and you see that group of really cringy straight girls that are all dressed the same. Like they all are wearing like fucking black pants and like a black kind of like tube top or whatever, and they all are wearing it. Maybe you don't see that so much where you live, but it's something that you would see not uncommonly in like New York or LA. It's like for some fucking reason, this group of like 4 girls are all wearing the same fucking thing.
Well, I know the word. It's called basic bitch.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
So it's like the basic bitch squad with their little fucking H&M black jeans and black tube top, and then one of them is fucking too fat to be wearing it and she looks weird, but they don't tell her for some fucking reason. Like, it's like,
because there's no gay guy.
yeah, and it's like, why didn't someone tell them not to go out like that? Because that one poor girl is like one of these things is not like the other, you know? And
no, because you'd have to like pick another one to throw under the bus with her, so that you're not singling out the one fat chick.
Well, that and also I noticed with girls, you have to have the one ugly one so the other three look good by comparison.
Yeah,
to answer your question, Ben, like gay guys, we're custom components that like fit niches that couldn't ordinarily be fit. But and you know, it comes back to what I was saying about the epigenetics. Like, you know, we're just those unusual people that are needed with a spice in the otherwise monotonous stew.
Yeah. I used to have this friend in New York who she would do the thing where like mostly would want to hang out with. Okay, so I was electronic DJ and like I was learning how to produce at that time. I'd only made like 2 or 3 tracks, and I wouldn't call that a producer now. I think that's really learning. But she knew a lot of the mid 2000s indie dance type, like LCD sound system type guys. Like she was actually friends with them. And so we would get on the guest list for these parties where there would be less than 100 people there. It wouldn't fill up the venue, but you couldn't pay to get in this. It would be on like maybe a Wednesday or some shit. And it would be for those, the type of guys on like, I think it's
Insiders.
Insiders, like people who are on the record label of LCD Sound System. I forget it was like DFA Records, and their type of friends. And she knew them, and so she could get her +1 on the guest list, and it would just sort of be like the overpriced drinks and one of the DJs spinning and like a few people, and that's sort of what it would be. And she would always want me to go out with her. She had female friends, not all that many, because she was kind of an ice queen. She was from Connecticut. But she eventually, once she realized that I was fairly fashionable, like that the guys thought that I was cool, you know, like the LCD sound system type guys thought that I was a cool gay guy. And then once I talked to a few of them, she observed that I was able to hold my own in electronic music discussions, and they actually respected that I actually understood electronic music reasonably well. Then I became the prime accessory, but I also started falling into this trap of having to get ready with her. And this girl being, I think she was definitely looking for like the guy to marry. At that time in her life, because she was in her early 20s, and I just think that that's actually what she was like, sort of her mentality was. She was kind of a probably wealthy girl from Connecticut. She would never admit how much money she had, but I think she was probably wealthy.
So she was a socialite.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, and she was really smart and really talented. Like she went to one of the most difficult design programs in probably the world. Like she went to Parsons, which is the Project Runway school, but she went to one of the hardest programs that they have. So it's not like she like wasn't doing stuff, but she would have me over to her house, and she was like, "Okay, so I want you to get over at 10. We'll probably leave around 10:45, 11. We wouldn't leave till fucking 12:45." And she would have anxiety attacks, changing over and over again. And she would be like, "Do I look all right? Is this lipstick too much?" And I'd be like, and she's like, "Don't lie to me. Don't lie to me." And she could tell if I was lying. And it was this like really like, it was almost, I don't want to say I was being held hostage, because we were actually good friends and we had fun. It's not like I wasn't getting stuff out of this relationship as well, but it was very intense the way that I was very utilitarian for her purposes.
Yeah. But it would have been less intense had she been better at picking out her outfits.
Maybe, but those kind of people always find something like what it is. I feel like those kind of people that have like this intense need that they can only get from other people. If it's not about the clothing, it'll be about something else. Like they just have a certain amount of energy that they have to take from other people in order to maintain their state of mind. And they're going to take it wherever they can find it.
Yeah, well, it was also, she was just a perfectionist. Like, I mean, she was a design student, and like, she couldn't repeat the same outfit, you know, more than one.
Drag queen?
Basically, no, she was a New York fucking hipster girl. Those girls are crazy, you know? And so she was always putting on new outfits, and, you know, she felt like if she hadn't had time, or I'm sure she probably usually had money to go shopping, but if she didn't have time to go shopping, she had to like kind of like mismatch things and put together something new. And if she wasn't super confident about it, she didn't want to fake it. And she was like, okay, what can we do? What can we do? What accessory can I swap out? Should I put on both these bracelets or really just one, because it's starting to look cluttered? Because one of the things about the mid 2000s last decade was that it was very, very minimal. Like you had to be lots of like jeans and V-neck t-shirts.
I'm sorry. Listen, I can handle the sexuality talk, but when we get into fashion, this is just too fucking gay for me. Like,
it's probably boring. Yeah,
Ben, don't worry. Like I tell everyone, there are different kinds of gays. Like I'm not a clothes gay. Like I'm actually a furniture gay. I wear like sweatpants, but I used to sell designer furniture. So, and I wanted to make it. So like I'm the kind of person like when Prince is the kind, I'm guessing, I don't know, like that when he meets you, he'd be like, oh, like he looks you up and down and he knows what brand of clothes you're wearing. I'd be the one who would like show up in your flip-flops.
Okay.
Then I'd be like, oh my God, is that an Ames chair? Like it looks original. Like
but I guess the point is not do not expect to actually remember the type of social dynamic I just described, but there is this like massive amount of stuff that goes on between gay men and women, and it is this very, very complicated thing that you wouldn't know unless you were in the situation. I guess is this sort of the takeaway.
I can grok half of it. The other half I can't grok, but I can grok
lobster.
Can I ask another question?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I got to set this up, and I'm going to fub the setup, but I'm thinking about it. Eventually, I'm going to ask you guys about the competition between gay men. So in an evolutionary mindset, you're thinking people are they're competing to be able to pass their genes along, right? And there's no genes that are going to be passed on, historically speaking, about the gay community when you have enough gay community together. And I wonder if it's not like a phenomena of a large enough society that there are enough gay people that they start to congregate, that you have this weird, not weird, I'm sorry, but you have this emergent competitiveness between the society that's completely different than the sexual competition, or the way that sexuality has been competitivized in the heterosexual community. So I just wonder, as that as a framework, what is the competition between gay men for mates and stuff? And I think you guys said something about status, and everybody is checking out about style, fashion stuff. So that's the setup.
I think it's a
sorry. I was just gonna say
I think it's a
cooperation than competition.
It's a collaboration.
I think personally that like the competitiveness amongst gay men is not anything that's specific to gay men. I think that competitive behavior is sort of an inherent human quality, regardless of whether, whatever the purpose of that competition is. Like we're in constant competition. All living things compete against other living things. If you want to go into the genetic argument, which I've thought about myself sometimes, I think you could argue that the gay competitiveness, other than the basic like competing for the best my part of the hill, my can of beans kind of basic life thing, I think it is, you could Freud would probably call it just a sublimation of the classic male drive. I think I tend
Or
to well, you know, like I mean, I think it's just more basic.
I don't
I
think
think it's more basic than I think. Honestly,
did Freud say
I think that
domination?
he might have, but well, domination and a sublimation was a big part of Freud,
Mhm.
from what I remember, and it's been a while. But basically, the idea that, like, you know, something basic and primal exists in all of us, but it cannot be allowed out into society, that because it's too animalistic, it's too raw, it's too
Yeah.
unstable,
Okay.
and so we have to express it in more subtle and unusual ways, in the same way that, like, a dream is an expression of something that you processed in the daytime, which your subconscious mind can't quite get. Gay men may not be competing to pass on their genes, but we still have that basic drive to, you know, whatever that step is. Because, I mean, early man didn't really think about, like, I must procreate a healthy generation of children. It was just the basic, like, I must stick it in, because that's what nature programmed men to do.
Yeah.
Because and all the rest of it, all like the selecting the best traits, you know, that's just natural selection. It doesn't require any kind of social or intellectual cognition. It's just a thing.
I would
So
say that. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just saying, I think that, you know, gay men are basically just, you know, we're just a variation of regular men, other than, like, you know, other than our choice of receptacle.
Okay, I don't think that what I'm thinking is your framing of the question was so the competitive thing. I don't think that all gay men are competitive at all. I think I think that certain gay men are, and that they're the gay men that shape gay culture, definitely. But there's a massive amount of guys that do not care to be in those top, like, level, like, movers and the shakers, trendsetter positions at all. There's a massive amount of gay guys that just want to get fucked in the ass all day, like all day, every night, and they would if they could. Like, and maybe they have to compete for that, but it's not about the competition. It's not about proving anything. It's just like they literally just want to get fucked all the time. But those are, I mean, that's obviously an extreme outlier. What I would say is the more common thing is that, due to the fact that we aren't procreating, and we know that, like, I don't think that there's, like, I have issues with this idea that gay guys should be adopting kids and that we should just, like, totally normalize that. Now, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be a gay adoption. I absolutely think that there should be. I think that if gay guys are really intent on raising kids, there's plenty of fucking foster kids who want a stable home.
Yeah.
So, like, that's absurd to act like we shouldn't have gay adoption. But at the same fucking time, gay men were not put on this earth to start bringing kids up. Like, the drastic majority of us, that's not something that is within us. And we know that. Like, we aren't subconsciously, like, it's like any gay guy that tells you, I always knew my whole life that I wanted to have kids. No, you convinced yourself at a certain point that you did.
You see, I disagree a little bit with you on that.
Yeah, and I disagree drastically with that.
Well, let me just say this, like, because I'm not trying to just throw you under the bus, Bacon, but I mean, again, like, the fact that you're bisexual is an important distinction in the fact that you want to have children. There are gay men that want to have children, but the reason I say I disagree, Prince, it comes back again to that TED Talk, like, well, and I'm not using the TED Talk as some sort of, like, the TED Talk said so. I'm just using it as an example. I know, but if it's a TED Talk, you cannot argue with it. It's TED, but no. I really liked the idea that was brought up in that talk, which was the idea that gay men exist to assist the tribe, you know, and part of that is having, you know, not all. I mean, like, you know, human beings are flexible. We serve different functions through our life, and different, whether intended or not. But I do believe the fact that gay men, I think, as a rule, are more well, not a rule, but as a general rule of thumb, you might say, more nurturing than, at least, Okay, maybe I'm
No,
wavering, but
that is a massive overgeneralization.
yeah, no,
there's so many gay guys that are not nurturing at all. Like there's no, but you know, and then wait, hold on. All of this is getting a sidetrack because whether or not gay guys want to have kids, blah blah blah. That's not even my fucking point. That is just like that's a generalization. The drastic majority of gay guys don't really want kids. They might convince themselves that they do because they feel like they should for some reason or another. But the drastic majority of gay guys instinctually kind of don't want kids. And I'm going to stand by that. But therefore, the rest of the gay guy's life is trying to find meaning out of his life. Some guys find it in competition, trying to be the best at something, like really, really be the best at something, and to a psychotic degree that often puts them even higher than heterosexual men, if by mere virtue of the fact that they have no family to even care about. Like, you know, and that's where you get those crazy gay geniuses. And then there's those other gay guys who just turn into complete fucking degenerates. And that's their version of meaning. And then there's other gay guys that I don't know. I mean, like those are the two polar ends, but like everything in between.
But is that us being more competitive, or is that just us having less to diffuse our energies? Like, since we don't have like a family and like children.
Well, I'm saying that competition is sort of irrelevant. It's just competition is one answer for the meaning. Like, what is the meaning of my life?
That's a good point, Prince. Thank you.
Yeah, the search for meaning in every person's life. I mean, everyone searches for meaning on some level. I think the question is how that isn't whether you search for meaning, it's how you search for meaning and how hard you look for it. A lot of people find meaning in what we would say is completely trivial minutia. Like some people find the meaning of their lives in, you know, watching reality television and, you know, just drinking beer with their buddies, and whether maybe they'll be happy, maybe they won't. I think it depends how much you think about it, like how much you have a need, like how deep do you want to go for that meaning? Yeah. Like, it's like for a lot of women, for instance, like meaning is, it's stereotype or not, for a lot of women, meaning is family, it's children. And I don't see any reason to denigrate that, because that's sort of, you know.
Then we wouldn't be here if that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that much.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, however the modern, you know, it's like, oh my God, how dare you? Like, it's like, well, no, that's kind of the whole thing. Like, would you denigrate the chicken for laying eggs? That's kind of like, that's sort of the whole deal of chickenness, is like the rooster and the chicken. It's like that's the question. The chicken.
For more roosters and chicken, and then more roosters and more chickens.
Yes, like the chicken and the egg. Like that's the whole.
Actually, technically, I made a video and I used that phraseology. We were supposed to say roosters and hens.
I'm not going to bring up my poultry.
How dare you tone shame me? that argument is totally
group name for hens and roosters. Do they have different ones?
There's the cock and the whatever the other one is.
Cock and hen, chicken and rooster. I mean, like, that's the great and terrible thing about English, is because we were polluted by French. We have thousands and thousands of words.
Were we polluted by French, or were we polluted by the Nords? Because they came in too.
No, you know what though? Here's the thing. Before the French, English was phonetic. The spelling made sense. Then the French came, and we got O-U-G in through.
Yeah.
Fuck that shit. Damn you, France. I will never forgive you for that.
Well,
also, why is there nonchalant but nonchalant? Why?
Oh, God.
They're still on my shit list for their last Eurovision entry.
Don't get me started on France. I hate their language.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful, but it's not the end all. Like
it sounds beautiful, but its spelling is atrocious. And I've tried learning like Russian and shit. So don't get me started. That makes more sense than French.
Wow.
Were we gonna talk about articles?
Oh yeah. Do you want to talk about articles? Because I have articles.
We can. I mean, I'm personally perfectly content to just bounce off of the Boyce brain here. Like it's
Same here.
You know what? Like, unless there are any articles that we absolutely must have, or unless like Ben has some, I'm sure Ben has perspective on all these things, but it's just, I don't know. I'm really enjoying just, like I said,
we have one
spitballing.
more question.
Okay.
Well, I definitely wanted to look at all the cringy quotes from that one drag queen. So
All right, let's should we get? Well, why don't we get his question and then we'll go to the cringy drag queen.
Maybe we should do the drag queen because my question gets really big at this point. We're at the point of the night where I'm 3 beers in, and
is your question getting engorged? Ben?
Yeah, it's 2 messant questions.
Wait, I want to hear it because if you're 3 beers in, then you're gonna fucking forget it.
Well, I'm gonna forget it.
So ask, yeah. Just take it off.
I just can't to the woman. The woman takes care of the fashion for me. So I don't have to take care of it. The question is, you brought up meaning. You brought up. I think it's all a slurry in my brain, in my 3-beer brain. That you're talking about meaning. You're talking about once you relieve the individual from the weight or the anchor of the family, then the question becomes, what is the meaning of life? Because you don't have that social pressure and that physical pressure to provide, right? So how do you, I guess in a way, meaning is how do you plug your will or your choice with what you've been given back into what is in order to create something. So I just wanted to use that as a segue to figure out, like, beyond being your identity, what brings you meaning in life.
I think that's why there are so many creative gay men. It's not just a stereotype. I think that, like, anyone can be creative, but I think if you've got an excess of energy, an excess of drive, and nowhere really to put it in the traditional sense, that gives you the drive to literally create your own meaning. So art, playwrights, beautification. I mean, like, and that's not to say that all gay men are creative, of course not, but I think it explains at least part of why there seems to be a disproportionate number of really gay, why there are so many gays in the creative fields, because it's a convenient outlet for the excess energy that would otherwise be taken by
and then
family.
you compete even better in that realm because you're not taken over by starving children.
Yeah, we do not have. There are no parasites to take the marrow out of these bones.
You'll just be a starving poet without the family.
We'll be thin and fabulous, and we'll have a great book.
Wait, but
children into it.
I'm not sure I understood the question. You said something about, like, how do you reconcile your identity with finding meaning or something?
I wonder, kind of part of the question, now that you bring it up, part of the question is, I wonder if people don't fall into the trap of sinking all their excess energy into activism because this identity has made that like the easy option. And that's very skeptical. I'm not accusing anybody of that.
No, that happens. Definitely. Yeah.
Definitely.
No, I've talked about, I think
they're the worst people.
I was rambling last week. Beware, or no, I think I was rambling on Bacon's channel with Feral Cat. How I've long warned younger gays to beware the professional gay person. Like not the gay person who's a professional, but the professional gay person.
Yeah. I think that it's a sad trap that sometimes, in the same way that, like.
Wait. Are we talking about traps? Let's save that for the very end. The very end.
No, I think that it is a place that a lot of gay men can get trapped in the same way that like a lesbian can be trapped by feminist activist stereotypes. Sometimes sexual identities can be, like, for a person that isn't very interesting or isn't very intelligent, it's a great way. I mean, let's look at Jamil, for instance. He's not a very interesting person.
He's
from
very
what
smart.
We can tell.
He's very good communicator when he decides to be. But go on. I want to give him.
I'm sorry. It's funny. I forget because these are these are real people, and to me he's just a ridiculous meme, but he's an actual person that you've interacted with.
He's a young impressionable person in a completely alien environment that's been weaponized by propaganda, that it's allowed him to have short-term gains. Like there's an entire faculty enabling him. Like he appointed himself. Well, no, he didn't appoint himself necessarily. He was recruited and fell into the role of student leader, but they groomed him to do that. Like
he was a bad example, but you guys all know what I'm saying. Like, if for uninteresting, uninspired people, it's very easy to use some sort of like, just a group identifier as a substitute for your personality, and they're tedious.
Well, like I always go back to like I guess intersectionality is the current flavor of activism these days. That it basically replicated all the toxic parts of religion. You have you preach the good word, you do the activism, which is their form of charity. You have the rigid social structure that keeps you in line. It's basically Mormonism with no chance of redemption. And then and I don't know if they do tithing or not, but it's basically a religion for people who aren't.
Of course it has tithes. It's the same kind of a structure, and I think it actually fits.
I'd say it's actually worse than religion, honestly, at this point, because I mean, at least religions sometimes try to do good. I mean, I know there's sects of like Christianity that are batshit crazy, but intersectionality is, other than the social structure it might bring to someone internally, the external garbage coming out to me is worse than anything the Mormons would ever do.
I think the only reason for that, honestly, is just because like intersectionality and those kind of things just simply represent what religion classically was. It's religion 2.0, because religion historically has always been like this. Religion, I think, in almost every society, I can't think of a society in history that wasn't dominated by its religion, like in one way or another. Like, and this just happens to be religion for the modern world, the religion of identity, the religion of justice, the religion of subjectivity. It's a terrible religion. It's incoherent. It makes no sense. But
we have to burn it to the ground.
It's because we had the first like atheistic society. So basically, it's kind of like just the shell of religion, and like a really. I think it's kind of like the lowest common denominator of religion in some ways, but with its own frills. But like basically, if you're stripped of kind of, I guess, religion and also this identity politics thing, I always say being gay is kind of like MGTOW on accident. And if you think about MGTOW, it's a rejection of the traditional male gender role, and it kind of puts those straight men in a similar position. So I think that parallel actually fits really well.
I think that you're right, but the one thing I disagree with is when you talk about how it's just like a pale version of religion, intersectionality. I think that it is actually religion at its most virulent. I think that it is a religion that is so infectious, that is so incredibly concentrated, that it is like that it just seeps into people. Because
you get the self-righteous, push, the self-righteous burst with a retweet. I mean,
it's a religion that is so complete. It is a religion that is so complete and so pernicious that these people don't even think it's a religion. It's like the classic thing: the devil's greatest trick was convincing the world he didn't exist. If you don't believe that you are religious and that you are propagating a religion, then there is nothing. Then you actually have been convinced that you're doing, the good work. What exactly is the difference between a hardcore gender activist who thinks that they've rejected religion in favor of justice? Well, replace the word justice with true faith, and you've got yourself the Protestant Reclamation.
Yeah, what would justice do?
Yeah.
What is it? What is it for? What does it mean?
I was actually I still need to make this video, but I have to upload footage from my phone. So I went to the Folklife Festival, I guess it was like 2 months ago, probably, month and a half. Benjamin probably knows what that is. It's in Seattle. It's like this yearly. Yeah, it is very granola. It's probably been going on since the 60s or 70s, and it's in the Seattle Center, which basically is just a hub of like 12, 15 different theaters in this little 2 or 3 block radius area. And so some of the stages are outside, some of the stages are inside, some of them are larger than others. But you go there and they have, you know, music and then some dancing, and then you can even see some slam poetry and everything like that. And I was mulling over in my head, I was like, wow, you know, this is so far left. You know, like everything here is leftist. There's not a single person here who isn't a leftist, except for some people who you can tell stick out like a sore thumb. And you know, maybe there's like a bluegrass band that is, but everything else is leftist. And but I was starting, it really made me think, like all day I was brainstorming what is the religion of the faithless left? Like, what is it actually? And I was able to realize that it's not just quote unquote social justice. That's been the thing that's been emphasized over the past 5 or 6 years. But there has been a thing that I feel has existed since the 1960s, really since post World War II, and then once the war started, like once the next draft happened and people started really rebelling, and they developed a number of different things, and I was able to boil it down to something like 3 different things real quick. I think it was multiculturalism. This notion of like trying to appreciate different cultures became very prevalent in the 1960s, and I'm not really sure why that is. It maybe had to do with the accessibility of travel and the fact that there were like roving folk singers that would go to like different countries and learn folk songs. Like Pete Seeger would go to Cuba and learn a bunch of like Cuban folk songs and stuff. And then there was this worshipping of female energy became very, very popular. And I think that that probably has to do with war and the fact that women didn't really fight in wars. And there was another one that I remembered. I'd have to jog my memory for these things. But there is these sort of like, I think it was environmentalism. And there was pragmatic reasons why these all came out of the 60s, early 70s, as these really, really hardcore values that, and the other thing that happened during that time, which people who were there say that you really, really shouldn't underestimate as having very significant importance, is LSD went on the scene. Because prior to the late 60s, they didn't have LSD. And LSD, when it first came out, it was uncontrolled. And so there was like good acid labs, and you could get really, really good acid. And the difference between good acid and bad acid is very, very strong, like extremely strong, I would know.
Hold on. Did you just say that acid was uncontrolled in the 60s?
Well, no, compared to what it is today, it's really, really hard to find acid now.
It's not controlled whatsoever.
What do you mean?
It's the opposite of controlled.
Well, no, but it's been around long enough that they really try to bust up the labs. But back in the 1960s, that was when it was like the
meth lab of the 60s. Okay, all right.
Well, yeah, it's really, really hard to make LSD. Like, it's incredibly difficult. But when it first came on the scene, they didn't understand. Like, it's not like the government was like trying to crack down the labs. Like, it was not a Schedule 1 thing. But eventually, you know, over the course of the 70s or so, they started trying to get rid of them. And 80s, 90s, you know, it was still around. But over the past 15 years or so, they mostly cracked down. Because, like, pretty much, I think there's only like 2 or 3 LSD labs in North America. It's not like it's a common thing. So everything that you get is really, really diluted. And it's very, very different from really good pure acid, and it's almost to the point where it's almost nothing like it. And when people started really, really tripping on this acid and, you know, embracing these values of environmentalism, multiculturalism, and worshiping the non-violent female, while they are tripping, it became this weird religious thing that they couldn't quite define. And
environmentalism is, although it became more extreme in the 60s, like I think probably as a part of what you were saying, this whole like, you know, acid trip appreciation of everything and rejection of the norms. I will say though, like the American appreciation of the environment and the desire to protect it is much older than the 60s. We were one of the earliest nations to start setting aside national parks, and the success of places like Yellowstone and Ansel Adams is a testament to that. I mean, we've been doing that, like Thomas Muir, or not Thomas Muir,
John Muir.
Benjamin,
Muir, yes.
click on Katz's icon. You'll be happier.
I don't understand.
Click on the icon on the left. Are cats gay?
Because my icon is let my darkness soothe your eyes.
See the freaking. Okay.
There you go. There you go.
So bright.
Let the cat soothe your eyes.
So bright.
By the way, Benjamin, I have to ask you a completely non-political, just personal question.
Good. I hate fucking politics.
What are your cats' names? They are adorable.
Bijou is the girl, and Bjorno is the boy.
Bjorno. I have 8 cats. I love animals.
Good God! But are they gay?
You have Prince to thank for that name. Actually, I had a completely different name before that, but it wasn't very memorable. So, and I must say, Prince, you were right though. Everywhere I go, people ask about my name. Although, to be honest, sometimes all they want to do is just ask the same questions, like yes or no. Like that's the number one response I get everywhere.
I'm gonna ask you.
You need a more non-binary name.
And then let me guess. Then they go, so okay, are traps gay?
Not as much as you'd think. Like you really would think they would all the time, but no. Most of the time, it's just like yes, they are, or like no. Like, but I'd say the number one response I get whenever I comment on like a Voltaire or any video, if it's nothing to do with my comment, it's usually just a response to my name. So I don't know. At least I'm visible.
Are we talking about cats or traps? Because I'm still confused.
It's just a variation on "Are traps gay?" Like, because my original name was Emmy Cat. But it wasn't very memorable because my early avatar was just the ceramic cat that I had lying around.
Okay. Yeah, and I went into like merciless criticism mode. Like when I'm trying,
so many names.
One of the things that if I respect you and I want you in my life, like if I actually think that maybe you seem cool and that we should be friends, I will give you like the most candid, like merciless advice in terms of like constructive criticism. And so I was just like, you need to change your name, dude. It's forgettable.
It was good though, I must say. Like,
oh no, we brainstormed for a while.
Oh, we did. Oh no, I'm saying I'm not complaining. Like it was definitely I don't have a thin skin, and I'm glad to have been on the receiving end of the criticism.
There we go. We know who the bottom was in this.
In that.
So,
no, but here's the thing though.
He's the senpai.
But this goes back to the type of New York gay that, like, because I went to college in New York. I 18 to 23, I was in New York and went to school at one of these schools where it was a writing school where I didn't have any more than 15 students in my class, and then I was also around these types of gay men socially mostly, and that's how I want to be treated by people that I most respect. Like if somebody I respect and want to talk to has a criticism for me, I want them to be straightforward, cut to the chase. And if I like the criticism, okay. If I don't like the criticism, I'll tell you exactly why. And that's it. And if we develop a relationship around that, cool. If we don't, then I don't have time for you anyway. That's just sort of how it works. And so yeah, I was treating cats in that way, and we developed a friendship from that. So yeah.
Wait, we're friends?
Can we get to the drag queen and her cringe?
Yeah, let's
pee first.
Let's cringe.
I just want to say though, back on like environmentalism, and like it totally did go like bong hit crazy town at some point, I guess after the 60s or whatever. Like if you look into feminist epistemology and this whole like mother nature kind of an approach to things, like there was this whole demonization of the scientific method that said it was phallocentric and penetrating nature and her secrets. And then it was kind of this idea that like nature was this female agent, and what man does, it like conquers and subdues her.
Gaia, Earth Mother Gaia.
That's right. Actually, there's a Diana Davison video kind of in this vein that I would recommend. It's the Divine Stupidity of Women, where she kind of like mocks these women who do these TED Talks about like this feminine mystique, and it's really quite funny.
If it wasn't environmentalism, they would have just found something else to go on about. Like, I don't think there's anything intrinsically gendered about the environment. If you really want to go onto it, you could say that like Earth, the environment is a cruel place. So you could make just as much, if you really look at it honestly, you could make just as much a case for it being incredibly male. It's just that we've anthropomorphized the environment.
Which is what somebody speaking from a phallocentric sort of worldview would say.
Well, I mean, the environment is a raging asshole. I mean, it does spread disease everywhere, and natural disasters, and kills a lot of people. I mean, that's very phallocentric.
It's also funny that the flower, which is the stereotypical representation of women, if you actually look at what flowers and plants actually do in reality, it's all chemical warfare. It's like it's a brutal competition for limited space and resources. It just happens really, really slowly, and it smells good.
Chemical warfare. And then we steal, and then we chop up their babies and hand them to women.
Yeah, and they and you know what? And they like it because it spreads them further. So in that sense, yes, Mother Nature is woman, because she's a devious bitch.
Good thing Benjamin was out of the room for that one, because he's innocent for that.
Oh yes, I'm sure. Like Prince, you've met him in real life. Like, are we making him blush, or is he just being like?
I can't tell. He's actually pretty hard to read.
He is. He's inscrutable.
Well, one of the things that he was talking about on something recently, we get to talk about him while he's not here. But no, he said this out loud, is that he does think that he is largely a different person if you know him as a friend than if you know him as Benjamin Boyce, the speaker. But it's
said
hard
that about
to
his Facebook. But...
Yeah, he was saying something about that, but it's hard to know where I fit into that.
Well, I guess you'll have to find out.
Because I don't really think I'm all that much fucking different. Like, if you actually hang out with me, I think I'm actually like, I'll be different if I'm hanging out with people in person. I will usually have to like get wasted to like not talk all the time, and I can play video games with people because we're like doing. I have to like play video games with people because we're like doing something different. And then I can chill out. But like overall, I'm kind of like this all the time, I would say. And you have friends. Yeah. Sometimes. That was rude. I'm sorry. I have no friends whatsoever except for you guys. And I'm kind of sad.
Zen disagrees with you that he is hard to read. He says he's not hard to read.
And hey, we could be real life friends, cats, if we ever got off our lazy collective ass. And
I know we have no excuse. We're 10 minutes away from each other.
Or like 20.
I think it's kind of a little bit of an arrogant statement to say that Benjamin is easy to read. I think that he's comes across as very, very nice, but if you really follow his channel and everything, he's a lot more judgmental than I think he leads on. I think that he wouldn't argue with that probably. So
I think that he is multi-dimensional.
Yeah.
And we don't currently understand his personal physics yet.
Mm-hmm. That sounded very feministy and gender studies-y.
What? Because I use scientific language in a completely ass-backwards poetic fashion? How dare you?
Yes.
Are we just like talking about our guest behind his back, but like publicly to his face, so that we have to send him this later as like full disclosure?
I mean, I haven't said anything that I'm going to take back yet.
I don't know. I've been just sitting here reading these tweets.
The chat's been gushing about him. He's obviously very well liked.
He is I think he's by far our most popular guest thus far, and he's certainly, of the people we've interviewed, my favorite. And you can say that to the world. Not that I haven't loved each and every one of our guests. I love them all, just not as much as him.
One of the things I think is really cool about Benjamin is that he has so far, for the most part, up until rather recently, never plugged into like the YouTube sphere very much. Like Karen and I had, chats with you fairly early on, Karen Strawn, But then like it's not like you ever really talk to like your contemporaries a whole bunch. And then you started interviewing people at Evergreen and everything, and then some other like local people. But it seems like it's only been kind of recently that you've started to meet more YouTube people.
Yeah. It's a whole universe.
It
I
really
don't know what
is.
to do with it.
You can
And-
you can get lost in it.
It's a whole culture. I mean, and there's all these different business practices and people like using it for different ends. So it really is a tool that is so wide open that everybody can kind of carve out their own niche too. So
It's just a question of
interesting to interact with people who are higher up on the ladder, so-called, from me, but then see people up all these different ladders and see that I could go up that ladder or that ladder or that ladder. So I'm still trying to figure out how to go further into it.
Yeah, well, I think that you're have like the way that you've maintained your channel being academic focused and everything fulfills a very like there's academics who do what you're doing, you know, and you can like find interviews with them and everything, but you're one of the only YouTubers who does what you're doing. And that's what I think is really like sets you apart.
Interesting.
So.
For what little relevance my advice might be for you, Ben, I would say like you don't change your secret sauce too much. Like, you know, like spread the sauce on new ingredients, sure, but just stay you, and because that's what attracted us to you in the first place.
That's good to hear. I mean, it's an enigma, but that's the only advice that I am prone to accept is the enigmatic. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I had this weird, you know, like YouTube evolution of jumping up at a time and raising my hand to, you know, not tokenize myself because it's like I had plenty of stuff to talk about, but I was like, okay, well, I am a gay guy. I should admit that outright, but I have all this stuff in common in terms of criticizing the left with all of these people. So maybe I should just talk to literally all of them and make friends with as many of them as I fucking possibly can and go on every live stream that I ever get invited to, blah, 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 blah. Even though I didn't necessarily think I was going to do that, because when I first started making videos, I thought most of these people seemed like assholes. And I was like, okay, I feel like I'm still this like leftist hype guy from Seattle, and I don't know if I actually get along with these guys. But then once I started getting invited to a lot of live streams and everybody was really nice to me, I was like, well, screw it, I should hang out with them. Well, then late December, I learned that I had dropped my guard and that there were some fucking psychotic assholes out there. So now I'm a bit more guarded again, and I'm not going to make that same type of mistake. I'm going to vet who I hang out with in a different way than I did, you know, when I made all those friends for a period. And that was something that I went through. But I don't see you going in that direction anyway, so it's not like I'm warning you not to do that, because it's not like you're hanging out with these like drunk streams where there's 10 people on there like I used to do, you know. So
Heimdall wanted us to ask Benjamin if he thinks he is judgmental or not.
Is Heimdall judgmental?
No, if you think of yourself that.
Am I judgmental?
Yeah, that's what
because I accused you. Okay, so this is how it came up. Somebody was saying that you're easy to read, and I said, I don't really think that because I had said I don't think that Benjamin's easy to read. I think he's actually rather difficult to read. And somebody said that no, he's easy to read, and I said no, I think that Benjamin is hard to read, and the reason why is because you meet him and he seems really, really nice. But if you actually follow his channel, if you follow his channel for long enough, you realize that he's actually really quite judgmental. And so I don't want to say that he's easy to read, because there is that contrast.
Wait,
it doesn't mean that you're a cunt. It doesn't mean that you're a cunt, but it means that like you are really good at being nice and not mean to people and everything. But there's a lot going on in your head that is like not registering on your face. Because if you listen to your thoughts for, you know, because I've watched at least probably 40 or 50 of your videos, maybe more like 75, you know, and I've noticed that it's like, no, you're really, really critically analyzing people. And so that nice, mild-mannered face that you have, it doesn't necessarily scratch the surface of what's going on inside your head.
Can I answer the question?
Yeah.
All right, this is my take on the matter, and I might be wrong because I'm just me talking about me, so it's probably skewed. There's a a lot of bias going on here, but I am exceedingly judgmental. I'm probably the most judgmental person I've ever met. I am disappointed in everything and everyone, and I learned very early on that if I actually share that with other actual people, it dissolves my connection to them. So I suspend that, and I end up sublimating my judgment and taking it out on myself, so I don't end up giving it to other people. So I try to judge myself more harshly than anybody else, which makes it difficult to actually proceed with any sort of creative endeavor. But but yeah, I'm very judgmental. But I'm especially judgmental of my judgmentalness, right? I want it to be the absolute most productive judgment possible. So I try to suspend it for that reason, so that when I do judge something, it's judging in such a way that there's a net positive instead of a negative to it.
I was gonna say maybe you're not judgmental but critical, and then you're critical of being judgmental, and that's why you think you're judgmental.
All right. So what's the difference between judgmental and critical?
I don't know. That is a good question, huh?
Critical as in judgmental, coming really hard down on something, whereas critical is more aloof and more detached. Perhaps?
I think that when people think of the difference between judgmental and critical, it's usually that judgmental implies that you judge something in a negative fashion, and critical is a little bit more open to positive
Theory.
interpretation.
One's constructive and one's not.
Like, yeah, but I don't think that that's, it's like when somebody, but I think that that's a kind of an arbitrary association that's just happened culturally. I think if you look at the definitions of the words, they're basically the same.
Yeah.
There's a lot that could be packed into it. It would depend on a person's like definitions.
Yeah.
I was just playing with words, to be honest.
No,
you guys on a
that's
wild
all I
goose
ever do.
chase.
Yeah. No, I love those goose chases.
Oh, hey, Ben, I always wanted to ask you, sorry, Benjamin, I know you don't like being called Ben.
You know what, Prince? We've set up an event together, so you can call me Ben.
So I always wanted to ask you, and maybe people have asked you this enough that you have a short answer. Maybe it's an annoying question to have to answer. Your degree, you sort of majored in poetry.
Good God.
So you hate this question? You hate it?
No. I mean, it depends on how much you hate the answer. That's the only thing I'm being judgmental about.
Okay, so because I think that we've talked, I don't know if we've talked about this that much or not, but I majored in playwriting, and I had a very specific reason for that. And I've always wanted to know your exact reasonings about why you majored in poetry, narrative arts, and because I don't remember. I just don't remember.
Why did I major in that?
Yeah. Why was that your focus? Because I know that. Okay, I knew that you wanted to not feel like you were just a critic, and so you focused on actually a discipline of creative writing, so that you were at least doing something outside of just criticizing.
You're diametrically opposed to the truth. You're reading things the exact wrong way, so you're totally right about that. Like I didn't just want to be a writer because I was incredibly disappointed with fiction.
Okay.
I was very disappointed with every story being just the same story, written in a different genre or just with different skins on it. There's just a certain number of stories that are being repeated with these different fancy redresses. They're dressed up in a different way, but it's the same story. And I went through and I wrote every story that I wanted to write, and I couldn't perfect how I wrote those without rewriting, which is really, really boring. The most god-awful part about writing is rewriting, because that's where all the actual useful stuff comes from. And so while I was entertaining myself during the third rewrite of everything that I wanted to write, I'm sorry, this is so convoluted, I ended up going to school and studying stuff about criticism and looking at what writing is and how it's constructed and how it's all put together. So when I think of criticism, when I think of literary criticism or literary theory, it's all about being aimed toward unlocking new patterns within literature as it exists. Theory is not about explaining literature to me so much as it is about understanding literature well enough to see what it hasn't done yet. Does this make sense to you?
Yeah, I can conceptualize. Wait, so
Yeah,
say
I'm not
the
making
sentence
any
again.
sense.
No. You are. It's a profound concept though. So theory is about explaining
It's not. It's
how
not about. Yeah.
Explaining how stories have fallen short in the past. Like
No.
no.
You're really putting me on the spot here. Theory is about understanding what literature is doing. So
Okay.
when you theorize about a story, you start to look about what the story is doing. Like you deconstruct it into its parts. There's a character, and then there's a sequence of events, and then there's other characters and a society or a setting or something like that. So when you engage with a story from the lens of theorizing about it, is that you stop listening to the story as a story, and you start taking it apart and seeing what sort of meaning the story is creating. And from that view, you can start to see what a story could be making that it hasn't made yet.
Okay. Yeah, I follow. And so how does that relate to your exact degree and what you specialize in at Evergreen?
Oh, God. Okay, so when I went to Evergreen, I studied literature. I just took a normal set of activities that had been assigned to an English degree. And I was going along with that, learning with a bunch of people who hadn't encountered literature before. And so when I was watching people learn about literature that I had already learned about because I was 19 years older than everybody else, so I'd gone through the same experience about learning about literature, I was watching them encounter story in a way that I had before I'd ever encountered story, but from the perspective of somebody who'd already encountered that. And so I was able to experience again that that rush of pleasure in encountering something that you've never encountered before, that I had already spent because I had already encountered all these things. And
like watching somebody watch Plato's Cave or something.
Yeah, exactly. When as a teacher, I think the joy of being a teacher is opening up that experience of expansion of the imagination or the understanding of somebody who's younger than you. And the pleasure in that is watching that happen and facilitating that and learning how people are unlocked, how people grow up in a way, and how people learn and the different things that they're interested in naturally, and seeing how story is useful for that, or seeing what it is about stories that make people think differently about the world. Right? So to tie it back into your question, the problem with Evergreen is that there is the degree that I have, and then there's the experience that I had in gaining that degree, that definition, that Bachelor of Arts. So when I go back and try to explain what I derived from that experience, there is the technical aspect of actually looking at all these very academic skills about creative writing and about what writing is made out of, and the different historical aspects of it and where it's come from and the development of it. And for me, it's all overlaid over all the different people that I experienced while I was there, going through that experience with them after I had already gone through that myself.
Okay. Yeah, that I think that makes sense. And if
You do?
no,
I
I do. And if it doesn't, the people that this is recorded and they can listen to it from beginning to end, because I kind of grilled you on that. So, because no, it was good. So I think that was.
I
got
wanted to
disconnected.
actually.
Did we already go over the RuPaul?
Oh, we didn't even get to that.
But I still do want to look at it in a second. But Derek.
Yeah, I just had a quick thought. About a week ago, Benjamin, you had done the Art and Orthodoxy with Jonathan Pago, and you'd kind of started to get into this where you're talking a lot about the importance of story and kind of how it shapes people's values and really their ethics, like like their paths and everything. But like one interesting aspect of it too is video games, because if you think about it, like we're kind of experiencing the first generation of adults who, like, a huge chunk of our lore was experienced in a video game medium that the rest of society isn't prepared to embrace or to look at or to theorize about it the same way that we think about like literature, basically, even though it kind of mimics a lot of those same functions. So I saw that you were kind of dragging the conversation in that way a little bit, but then it didn't quite go down that path with Jonathan. But
no, yeah, that's actually a really, really interesting point to bring up, especially like for me, as in relation to what Benjamin was talking about, as somebody who I was a lifelong gamer. My father was a computer scientist, and he was very into video games when they first started coming on the market, just because he thought that they were cool. And so he bought me them at a very early age, and that's what I got. Every birthday and Christmas, I got a new video game, and I had like every different system until college. And then I explicitly quit video games because I was making electronic music, and I felt that video games were exhausting the part of my brain that was the same part as electronic music worked. And so I was like, if I cut out the video games, I'll make a lot more electronic music. And that was true. So I stopped playing video games entirely for 10 years, and then I had to pick them up. Well, I didn't have to, but I chose to pick them up again in 2015, and I started with a Xbox 360. So that's not current generation, previous generation video games. And I had to like learn a whole new controller, because now they have the double joystick with all the triggers and shit. And now I have a PS4, and having to learn Overwatch and actually get good enough to get into the Platinum League, which is like above 50% of Overwatch players, which is, not super great, but like that's semi an accomplishment for somebody who hasn't been playing video games for the past 10 years. There's so much lore and terms, like all these different acronyms and just game mechanics, strategy types that, like in Overwatch, there's a character named Farah and there's a character named Mercy. Farah is a flyer. She can fly around and shoot rockets. And Mercy is a healer. She can fly around and she can follow people and heal them and amplify their damage. And so if you're playing and somebody says, uh-oh, watch out, pharmacy, they're referring to Farah flying around with a Mercy trailing her, healing her. And it's like a combo, and because it's Farah and Mercy, pharmacy. And there's like all of this like language going on. And it was this very, very complicated thing that I had to start picking up. And I have this feeling of like, wow, I was able to do this just in the nick of time and catch on to the team video games. Because if I had waited just a few more years, I don't know if I would have been able to transition, and I would have been left out of this thing that young people are doing, maybe for the rest of my life, because even as a lifelong gamer, it was really, really hard for me to pick this up. And yeah.
It's interesting hearing you talk about that, because I can't relate to the video game dynamic because I'm a terrible gamer. But I feel that same way about YouTube, because like it was something that I never planned on doing. Even though I wanted to be a filmmaker early on in life, I had basically abandoned that dream many, many years ago. And while I don't necessarily consider what I'm doing now to be filmmaking in the classical sense, I mean, I suppose I am making films different than I imagined, but there was this whole the subculture and all the intricacies and this community and this extended history and mythology of YouTube. And it was something that I never pictured myself as someone in their early 30s, like learning for the first time. And I feel like it's given me a perspective that a lot of people simply don't have, even from my small corner.
Yeah. Does that Benjamin, are you there?
He's muted.
Yeah. I don't think he's there. I think he must have gone to the bathroom or something. But it yeah, it's a very strange way of young people learn quicker than older people, and it's not just that they learn quicker, which they do, but they are more interested in learning. Like if a young person, like young people have more natural curiosity, which is more more of a motivating, or I would say it's the reason that young people learn quicker is not so much just because they're kind of their brain is less empty and they're working better, which it kind of is, but also just because they're a little bit more naturally curious. And there's something very fascinating about that.
Well, yeah, that's the way human beings are. Like every new generation adapts to the environment that was shaped by the previous generation in the many different ways. Like we created the world that the next generation became part of, and they create the world that the generation after them. And it is really interesting to watch like how people, like the constant evolution, the successive generations. I kind of think of it sort of like in the way that phones really like phones are these days. It's where like, you know, we grew up watching like where we had dumb phones and text messages was like something that you had to do with Prince. You remember T9 conversion where you had to like hit the numbers to make the intricate text messages. And now like this is a generation of kids that have grown up with like Google and Siri, and it'd be very interesting. I have a couple of nieces who are 2 years old, and I can't even imagine what they're going to do by the time they get to phone age.
So I kind of wanted to look at this thing, and then we can maybe start winding down, because our show tends to go for around 3 hours or so, and I don't know if Benjamin was actually prepared.
I was not prepared whatsoever, but now I have a picture of male buttocks on my screen.
Well, it's so small.
You're welcome.
It's a thumbnail. So,
Prince provides all of our nudes.
So this is a very funny happening. One of the things I don't know, like this is one of the main topic of conversation on the Gaytriarchy is the massive infighting within the LGBTQIA++ community. And you know,
wait, there's 2 pluses now?
You know, there's some other fucking shit in there too. Like at this
We're
point,
just being careful. We're just being careful.
So
Yeah, there's probably hieroglyphics in there too.
So, you know, there's the massive infighting, and a lot of people from outside, they know about it, but they don't know, you know, just how relentless it is. And we find at least 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 things every week, basically, that has to do with it usually. And just further examples, and it's pretty much always, you know, instigated by the intersectionals. Like it's never like there's like actually like they complain about how there's all these masked gay men who are, you know, what?
Masked.
Mask,
Gay men?
masculine, because they put
Oh,
mask.
masculine. Okay.
Yeah, they
not
put
mask, not gay men wearing masks. That's
No, yeah,
that's-
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
No, they put mask for mask on their
Okay.
profile, and so
All right.
they complain that there's these like unaccepting mask gay men, and that they dominate make gay male spaces. Except for nobody actually like notices that. Like largely, it's like, okay, you mean that they dominate hookup profiles, or they claim to be masculine, but if you actually go out to the bars, it's dominated by drag queens, like currently, mostly. And so this is one of the specimens of like you witnessed a lot of this culture at Evergreen with the intersectionals, obviously, but this is an example of I saw this happening within the gay male community, and it's just funny, and so I want to read through this. You're obviously more than welcome to comment. That's what we do. So RuPaul's Drag Race Season 9 contestant Asia attacks the gay cis, in quotes, community on Twitter, which, by the way, I just want to make nobody's sitting around being like, we're the gay cis community. Like, that's a...
I refuse to use the cisgender word.
Yeah, it's like,
Good luck.
that's your framing. So, okay, Drag Race Season 9 contestant Asia went on Twitter yesterday to attack gay men who she says mock or reject trans and gender non-binary people. Some of the worst tweets have been deleted, but we have the Asia Twitter attack put in paragraph form. At the airport for my flight Spain to Edinburgh so I can get to Dundee and have some thoughts. Why the fuck is the idea of... Okay, so wait, sorry, I have to interrupt. I think that she probably just got rejected on Grindr. That's what I'm imagining. Why the fuck is the idea of being a gender nonconformist or non-binary so riddling to people in society, including the gays? It's almost like after all the things we've gone through as a community and all you've learned to do exactly what society did to you. Okay. So it's almost like after all the things we've gone through as a community and all you've learned is to do exactly what society did to you. I read an entire thread of comments on my videos of me explaining why I didn't want to be labeled as just a drag queen. And honestly, I wasn't going to say anything, but bitch, have y'all looked in the mirror?
Not at your mirror.
I'm not following exactly what... I read an entire thread of comments on my videos of me explaining why I didn't want to be labeled as just a drag queen, and honestly, I wasn't going to say anything, but bitch, have y'all looked in the mirror? Y'all are some soggy-ass gays who are looked down at in society and bigoted against. Have you realized people still make fun of you and people still say your choices are not correct? That's your lifestyle doesn't make sense? Well, wait, maybe that's not entirely true. Like, maybe the people that are gay guys that are making fun of you literally don't have a problem being friends with straight people, and that's why they make fun of you in the way that they do.
I love the way that drag has gone from being like a performance art form where we confront ideas with humor and irreverence to just another form of activism now. Like, I feel like the drag queens, like, what have they've made like some sort of weird dark alliance with the transgenders. It's like, okay, you're not going to call us like cultural appropriate, like gender, whatever. In exchange, we're going to repeat your talking points. And
yeah, it was almost as if they said, okay, drag is majorly problematic because you're making fun of transgender people, but we'll let you keep it if you become trans.
It's their gateway trans.
Well, what's the antidote to that then? How do you reverse that sort of negativity going through and separating people from one another within this this gender fluctuation kind of activity?
Well, I would say it goes back to what I have said from the beginning of this conversation, is that complete and hardcore, stone cold, dead stop, no compromises, separation, no more feminism in the gay male community, period. And from there, then it's like, okay, do we want to have drag queens? And it turns out drag queens are a historic part of gay culture, rooted back to like, I mean, I don't know, maybe fucking forever, but there were drag bars before the 50s and everything. There were drag bars, and it would be this. The thing is that, you know, gay bars have been around for a long time. I think even during the Depression, there was this one, even in Seattle, and it was underground. You know, you kind of had to know about it, and the drinks were probably overpriced, and I think usually the mafia owned a number of them. And I think, you know, it was illegal to be gay, but you knew that you were in a gay bar because there'd be performances of men dressed up like women. And that was sort of the thing. And then if you were one of the drag queens, you would be called just a queen. And the queens were the regulars. And the queens would only have sex with the non-regulars. Like, there wasn't this sort of there was sort of like this butch and femme dichotomy, and largely it would be like sailors and stuff would go in and have sex with these queens, and the queens were always supposed to be the bottoms and the sailors were supposed to be the tops, and it was like this like weird tradition. And now I don't know if we want to like hold on to that or not, but that has to do with a tradition within the gay male community. It has nothing to do with fucking feminists, like all this like weird gender blah 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 blah. Like that has to do with shit that gay guys should work out for themselves.
I know. For me, the answer is just gigtow. Like I say, we go off into the wilderness and just, you know, do our own thing. I just don't care about the other letters anymore. I know that there. For some people, the hope of reconciliation, the hope that like the rainbow will heal and we can all be happy again. I don't know if we ever really were, but I'm sure whatever. For me, I don't really care. I mean, my philosophy is like, if you want to be a drag queen, enjoy it. Like, but enjoy it for what it is. It's a performance. It's an art form. I think that gay men, as part of the gays going their own way movement, we have to divorce our sexuality from politics. This idea that we have left over from mostly from feminism, but also as a residual of the early civil rights movement. The person is not political. That's a very dangerous idea because it reduces your identity to nothing but like a vessel, like a brand, like you're a billboard for a brand of politics. And I'm an individual. I don't care. I don't care if you think it's problematic that so-and-so said so-and-so. I don't care if you think that I should have sex with you because you do this or you do that, or I don't care if you think that like, you know, I should feel a certain way or I should act a certain way because of privilege or whatever. No, fuck off. I am who I am. You are who you are. And we're going to talk to each other as individuals and equals or not at all. And I don't accept the narratives that are being placed upon me. I don't owe anyone anything except respect when they give it.
Like, I think I was getting into this on Twitter at some point in the last couple of weeks or so. It's not that people think a certain thing. It's that you're trying to pin obligations on me. Is that what I'm opposing? Like, I don't care if you want to be non-binary. Just don't force me to be like, oh, I have to bend and kiss your ass for it.
Exactly. And you can't force me to validate your ideas. I don't like they're trying to use guilt and fear in order to make these ridiculous ideas that cannot withstand scrutiny into like legitimate options.
Yeah. Wait, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, because there used to be a time when drag queens accepted their fate as gay men who were ultimately men who dressed up as women within the gay community, and there was a sacrifice and there was a gain to in the act of doing that. The gain was that once you were dressed up as a woman and a really exaggerated woman in all sorts of crazy makeup and wig, then the gay men at the bar weren't all trying to have sex with you because you didn't look sexy. You know, you looked like a woman, and then they didn't want to have sex with you, but they did want to socialize with you. Everybody wants to talk and hang out with the drag queen, but they don't want to fuck you. That's nice because you get to be popular, but you aren't being sexually desired. And trust me, don't trust me, trust any, like, if you ever meet a really, really hot gay guy, you can ask him, if he walks into a bar alone, are all the guys nice to him? No, they're fucking mean. They're not nice at all, because gay guys are really, really vicious to attractive men. They act like they aren't interested, and it's like it's this weird mix of competition and desire. Like, sure, some guys will try to hit on him, but if he isn't interested, then they'll start being mean, and then most guys are just preemptively mean. But if they dress up in drag, they can get away from that. Or if they're unattractive, if they do a good outfit, then they get popular, and it's like, oh my god, they get all this attention from guys that would have never talked to them. That's amazing. So it's a give or take. You give something up, but then you get something socially. Well, once they started trying to do the whole non-binary thing and actually legitimize it as a 24/7 personal label, then things started getting weird, because then they can start trying to have the best of both worlds and being like, you should accept me as a femme and have sex with me, and why do you reject me the way I am, blah, 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 blah. And it's like,
I hate that whole femme thing.
Yeah. Like, once they started trying to say that being an around-the-clock drag queen should not just be 100% sort of like accepted, which, like, I don't think anybody really has a problem with that, but that, rejection.
When it became an identity instead of a practice.
Well, and when it became that you rejecting these people sexually was somehow offensive, then that was treading on some really, really dangerous territory in terms of any sort of like there was bound to be a lot of fighting within the gay male community once that happened, because back in the day, drag queens accepted, 10 years ago, you accepted that if you were a drag queen, you were not going to get laid if you were always in drag.
I don't know what we're talking about anymore.
Okay, can I read some of the tweets just because I want to Valley Girl a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, which one were we on again? We were on the
now that being said.
Okay. Now, like, with that being said, when did it become your job to monitor or control anyone's gender, including saying that people are trans for attention, bashing the femmes, enforcing social heteronormative constructs, etc.? Like, what the fuck, really?
Yeah, it's just they think they're a wizard, right? It's so a mage without mana is just a dude in a dress. A drag queen's a dude in a dress, and they think that they can use words like magic spells. So they learn these fancy terms in social justice class, and it means that now I get to have my cake and eat it too, and be the greediest fucking drag queen of all time.
Yeah, I get to dress up like a drag queen, be popular like a drag queen, and you have to fuck me. What now, motherfucker?
Here I'll go.
And I'll get to be fat.
Seeking masculine men for a quick fuck discreetly because you're too much of a coward to be seen in society as the faggots you are, or questioning everything femme you do in fear of being labeled as femme by people whose opinion don't matter. That's where, like, he's lost the drag. It's no longer a character like it's supposed to be, and that's at the point where he's allowed the drag character to become his identity. He's using it as a cudgel in order to improve his status, because anyone who rejects him, he just gets to bash over the head, even if it has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it sounds like he's projecting a lot.
Is this when we just get to call him a cunt?
I mean, could you just imagine like approaching like a married couple and just like berating them over their sex? I was like, what do you do? Like, what's this? What do you do that? And then they're just like, can we not talk about this? Thanks. And it's like, well, you're obviously really insecure about it. It's probably just like fucking weird, isn't it? Like, like that's the same kind of logic, isn't it?
Basically.
So, here's the tea, baby. Gender nonconformists, gender queers, non-binary folks. Where's the X? Cool. Non-binary folks and more are changing the game. We are making the field a safer place for you by willingly being ourselves and not giving a fuck what society says because we are brave.
Okay, so I just got to say this one thing. This might only be because of my cousin's bitchy boyfriend, but I thought being out proud and like a fabulous bitch was the only point of being gay in, I don't know, circa 20, whatever current year we're in.
I'm just gonna say it. Like, this person sounds like the kind of person who does drag because he has a small penis. He's not very interesting, and he's probably not very good looking without a bunch of wigs and weird things. Like, he just sounds like a very uninteresting person. The kind of person that is in the corner alone. No one wants to talk to them, and when he does talk, people are like,
Here,
The drag queen lip sync badly.
Let's read. We're almost to the end of them, so let's and then we can armchair psychologize him. So, when you had a dick in your ass last night and let that random guy come inside of you for a cheap thrill, and then walked home in shame of who you really are, what did you contribute to our community, in comparison to someone just living their truth? So other people in our
so fucking gay. How did you guys talk me into showing up to this? Like some epic troll. What is going on here?
I wish I could plan that out. That's too complicated for me.
See, well, you're lucky. Hey, Benjamin, you're lucky that we're only doing one of the articles because usually we do 4.
This is so gay.
We dive straight into it. Sometimes it's a spelunk.
Is it safe to say we went head first into this?
This was head first.
Let's finish.
I think we just fisted Ben, honestly.
I'm sorry, can I just dwell a little bit on this idea that, like, can we take emails from anybody? Please tell us about an experience where you took a dick in the ass and they came inside you and you came home and you were like, yeah, I did something for my community. Like, I want to hear right? This is totally like a part A, step 2, question mark, step 3. I want to hear all the step B's. I want to hear all of that logic. Send us your emails.
Well, this is very much ask not what your movement can do for you, but what you can do for your movement. And apparently being a slut is all you need to be.
Can I just say I just had a realization just now. I understand why none of you use your actual face for these videos.
I do.
I'm the only person with my face up here.
Well, you're not participating.
Hey, you know why I don't. I would.
I know. I'm kidding.
Okay,
but I really gotta go, guys.
Oh, okay.
I gotta go. I don't know how to get out of here.
You can leave anytime. We're about 15 minutes till the end. So yeah, it was great having on. And we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, for sure.
It was great.
I need to see this hand.
Oh, yeah. Let me unscreen share.
Wait, hold on. Is that an OK symbol?
Spaceman, say something.
Oh, I didn't realize I was muted. Yeah, it's my lady hand. I used to work at Hallmark and it fell and I just like kept it. And I like to keep it and I like put things in its hand and stuff.
We can only imagine.
Taking on a life of her own. Everyone should have a lady hand, I think. If I need to do something delicate.
No.
I'll also wave out our guests with it because then they feel more like welcome and then they're more likely to come back too.
I feel so welcome.
I don't need any lady parts in my life.
Right.
It was really great talking with you, Ben.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
You asked some amazing questions. And
thanks for that.
It was good that we had a session that was very overtly intellectual as opposed to what we usually do, which is just devolving into weird sexual situations.
Well, and this was also maybe the first one ever where I didn't try to like scrounge to get a guest day of.
No. Also, Katz, why did you say session when we're talking about apparently sex?
All right.
You better just go.
I'm gonna go. I don't know how to hang up, but I'm gonna hang up.
Yeah, hit the leave call button.
Keep it easy.
Oh, hey, that was unceremonious.
Okay, so present me.
Oh, I'm presenting the article. Want me to read it?
Oh, you, yeah. Okay, so wait, when you had the dick in the ass, and then
Yeah, I'm on the so other people one.
okay, yeah, great.
So other people in our big, be mindful. Wait, what? Oh, fuck. The grammar's gonna throw me off sometimes. Be mindful of those who are paving the what grammar? Paving the way for you to even be yourself, and be mindful that our community is held under a lens of hate in the world. Well, I'm feeling a lot of fucking salt from you, bitch, but whatever.
Yeah.
Instead of moving backwards, let's move forward and listen to what your community has to say. Be inclusive of the entire trans community because they are literal angels. Well, you're a fucking cunt, so where are we on this?
I'm going to move forward away from you.
And are so important, including non-binary, genderqueers, etc. Have respect and be thankful. Non-binary, genderqueer, why do you need two words to be different when they mean the same fucking thing? Anyways, and don't tell someone who says they're not labeling their art as drag this bullshit. Oh, and motherfucker, lastly, it is not funny when you hoes be like, oh, I'm gonna identify as a dog now. Oh, I'm a tree today as a mockery to gender identities. It's not funny, and you look like a fucking idiot.
Oh my god, I'm laughing, and I wasn't even there, and I'm laughing.
If you're anytime the argument revolves, it's not funny. It almost always is.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I actually have a video where I talk about. It was called "Transgender Day of Visibility Cringe." Mm-hmm. And I found a Facebook quote from somebody that I definitely don't know in real life. Oh, absolutely not. No, actually, I said in the video that I do. In fact, I did actually know this person. This was somebody who played in a band that I think I played some shows with. They're friends with my friend that was in one of my old bands. And this person was a freaky genderqueer type person. And I don't know if I don't think that they probably took hormones. I don't think that they did. But they always dress up like a woman, but were born as a man, and were trying to be as freaky as possible. And I didn't ever really think that this person was cool. You know, like I never like wanted to talk to them at the party, and I never liked their band. I didn't think that they were very smart, but I didn't have a problem with them. They were always nice to me. You know, it was like, but I always got the impression that they were just trying to kind of have fun. And, you know, the San Francisco crazy queer art world for a while was like just these people that were largely very different in a lot of ways, and then there were some people that were more different, like more extreme, but you could find not necessarily camaraderie around that. No, you could find camaraderie, and you could find a way for that not to be actually like weird. It became part of what the scene sort of was. But eventually that person in particular got to the point where they were complaining about the infighting within the trans community itself. And this person's complaining about the infighting within the gay community. But I'm coming to the same conclusion, which is that the trend of trans trending is over. And the people who popped on that bandwagon and rode it as far as they could ride it still want to stay on the train, but they're like, nope, train's coming to a halt, sweetheart, you better get off. And they're really pissed. They're like, no, but I like this train. Then that's all this is.
Yeah, all I'm gonna say is that riding a dick is better. Just saying.
I actually do know a person I went to college with who went trans and then decided to detransition. I'm not sure if that's still the plan, but they're actually they'd be a great guest to have on the show. I think I mentioned them before. Yeah, but, like they'd have a really interesting perspective on that too, because they had very different reasons than you'd normally see. So it's always fascinating to kind of follow them.
Oh, I do have a second article. This is more of the why we shouldn't have hate speech laws category, if you want me to shit on it quickly. It's another Polish story because I got it from a British news site. Okay, so long story short is this symbol is actually considered desecrating Poland's national identity, and it's actually a finable offense just to have it.
Wait, the symbol with
yes, the thing, the eagle with the rainbow flag around it.
Oh, with the rainbow.
Yeah, that's considered a desecration of Poland's like national identity or some bullshit. Because the flag, because the shield's supposed to be all red. It's supposed to be like the coat of arms or whatever. So, anyways, it's considered a desecration. It was at this pride in this city. I'm not going to butcher Polish, but anyways, these people were fined a whole. Where was the fine? What fine was it? They were fined basically 200 Polish money, which is about 50 some odd dollars, for making a gay symbol out of their national flag. Reasons why we shouldn't have hate speech laws, dumb gay people. Because eventually we'll fucking...
draconian.
Well, I mean, it's draconian, but I mean, it's literally, they will fuck you over, and now these people have to pay out like 50 some odd dollars, or 200 of their money, because they decided to make a flag, and, you know, this is basically an extension of hate speech laws.
Yeah, well, no, and it's absurd, and it's funny too, because like there's all sorts of I guess far right waiting on the territory of white identitarians, but not exclusively white identitarians, that worship Poland, and they think that Poland is so cool.
No. Also, in fun news about Poland, they actually wouldn't let Richard Spencer into the country because they hate him. Their government hates him. Yeah. Yeah, even they're like, you know, oh, Poland's so based, they don't even want them in there. So,
well, Richard Spencer is just a gay actor anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it just says something that like literally their parliament has banned people like him from the country. Well, that say they're like him. Yeah, they're not a fan of fascism, and you know they don't, and the alt right doesn't understand why.
That's kind of like the irony is they're going to achieve like Richard Spencer's goal, like, but they're gonna say, no, fuck you, people. Not the people who actually want this.
Well, but I don't think Poland is. No, I don't know enough about Poland to.
Poland's really uber Catholic, but they're not entirely white national. They're nationalistic and Catholic. That they don't.
But they're not entirely white.
Yeah, they're not. They're white. They're like 95% ethnically Polish. It's just that they're not. I don't know. They're not invasive about it. They're very much, we want to do our shit here and fuck off if you want to fuck with that. But they're not like Germany where they want to like invade everything. Kind of. I guess they're the European version of Gigtow. It's more like, hey, fuck off. This is our space. We're doing what we want.
Yeah, or like a lot of, you know, a number of Asian countries probably, or at least certainly Japan and China are not necessarily like super keen on letting anyone in. Besides, you have to be Chinese or Japanese. Like,
they're basically like, I guess that's one way to put it. They're basically Japan. It's basically we're gonna do our thing and fuck off.
Yeah, like people are so irritating when they talk. You know, like white people invented racism, blah 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 blah, and like, you know, when that leaves out, I think I've probably talked about this before, but that leaves out Asian racism. And the thing is about Asian, like in terms of Japan, it's not even fucking like, oh, you're supposed to be Asian or we hate you. It's you're supposed to be Japanese or we hate you. And like they have a word that's one of the, if you're actually an American that visits Japan, you will become very familiar with this word and you will never forget it. It's gaijin. And gaijin roughly just translates to non-Japanese foreigner. And it's used as an insult generally. Not as an insult generally necessarily, but very commonly. And it's just like, it's everybody who isn't Japanese, and that's how they view people. And it's not about the race so much as the land, or it's something entirely different. It's like this different view that they have. Okay, never mind. I don't want to even get into it because it's not something that I have a formulated thought around, and I haven't been thinking about it that much. So, is there other articles?
Not really.
I have a tweet from Trans Instinct Bria that I linked to you guys about trans girls getting periods, which is amazing.
Okay.
Nobody teaches trans girls about our periods. We just get these weird times where we're moody and crampy and sad, and we don't know why, and just chalk it up to another reason we're not good enough in life. So just so you all know, trans girls get periods.
So like the estrogen brings out a monthly cycle that mimics the period, except for like they don't bleed.
I don't know the theory. I haven't gone too deep into this rabbit hole, but she has made multiple responses, and it gets crazier and crazier. But I thought this kind of tied in nicely with some of the early bits of our conversation about like this idea of like, I don't know, the men going trans, and like I kind of believe that if you're transitioning well enough to truly become a woman and gain the hormones, like maybe you kind of psychically do give yourself periods. I want to believe you can play the fucking X-Files theme song, but I think maybe there's a way. Maybe it's real. Maybe we really should be teaching all the little trans girls about their ghost periods, their phantom periods.
Oh god, that's heteronormative and phallic or something. I don't know.
Maybe we can compromise. Like we can just make like one weird children's book and just stick it in the library, and just like if the weird kid wants to go walk over and find it and it relates, it's great. But we don't have to like get a big blown up version of it and have the teacher read it to everyone.
Oh, so you mean we won't have the drag queen like Lindsay from Queer Kid Stuff just reading a giant picture book about how a man wanted to be Jill and then like had a period?
I don't object to the drag queen. I object to like the story and the content of the story. Like the drag queen could totally do like a giant version of like I Want My Hat Back or like any of the other classics. And I think that'd be fine. I don't think that drag queens are like that offensive. They keep them away from children. Granted that they like follow general rules of modesty. That would apply like regardless of drag status or not.
But modesty is just a social construct.
I guess most drag characters would be inappropriate. Like shit, Mrs. Doubtfire is a drag character. Mrs. Doubtfire is fine around your kids.
I don't know. Oh god, I wonder how long it's going to be before we start going back into movie history and being like, this was horrible. Let's remind ourselves that this movie exists, and then like get movies trending again from like the 80s.
Netflix is kind of force memeing that a little bit.
No, that does get the ad revenue going. What little Netflix has.
My favorite thing is like we've been watching this show Nailed It, and they end it with like instead of like see you next week, it's like the next episode is now in 3, 2, 1. And we're like, yeah, oh my god, it is right now because it's Netflix. I don't know that we watched the whole thing.
Okay, well, are we done? Because I'm running out of juice here.
Yeah, I think these are the embers, but I had a lot of fun. I thought we had some good conversation, and our live chat was very lively, and we had some good interaction with the live chat and the stream, which I always like. So overall, I'm very happy, and good night to everybody.
Yeah, and is there any announcements that I have? I don't believe I have any announcement. We do not have a guest planned for next week. Hey, how about this? If you guys want me to try to get anyone on the show, I can try. A lot of people would potentially be interested in coming on, and I could just write them. But my fucking thing is that I forget. Like I literally have. I don't have a good memory for such things. I can barely remember like what video topics I'm going to be trying to write about. So yeah, if you ever want to see somebody on the Gaytriarchy, write us, and I'll see if I can get. I mean, there's people I can get. If you think I know somebody, if you have a reason to believe that I know somebody, and you would like to see them on, hit us up. Like. Somebody like fucking Miss Misa or something. I don't know if she could ever make it on the same time because she is in the UK. But she would be cool because she's bi and nice and likes the gays. And I'm trying to get Allison Tiemann is probably going to come in August. She said she's busy right now, but it's hard to remember ideas of people. So tell us. Write me an email at mrprinceofqueens@gmail.com. Bring on Direwolf. I don't know Direwolf. Do I know Direwolf? Actually, I think I do. I don't remember Direwolf, though, right now. I could look. Okay, thank you. I'll talk to you guys later.
Night, everybody.
Night.
Bye.